And I'll call the special council meeting to order for Wednesday, January 29th, 2025. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda of the special council meeting of Wednesday, January 29th, 2025? Councilor Ray, Councilor Popoff, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. So before we get into the meeting, we'll be turning it over to Charlotte here shortly. Mark has got a video, a little bit of an introduction here before today's meeting that's, I think, well worth council viewing before we start the talks on the budget. Mark?
All right, thank you, Mayor Price. So just before we get started on the meeting, just want to start it off on a positive note and some pride with our community and some work that was done. So this will just take 2 minutes. It's well worth the 2 minutes. This is thanks to Darren's hard work and with Mike over there in with planning and engineering in terms of promoting the community. So we've engaged a new artist. His name is Lucas Nemeth from Kimberley, and just the promotional work that he's doing on behalf of the city of Cranbrook, it is taking us to the next level is all I'm going to say. And rather than me speaking, I'll just ask Ross to play the video for everyone here, and you'll see the excellent work and where we're going. So if you could play that, Ross, please.
Good stuff. I think that was a good intro. That was pretty positive. I think sometimes, when we're sitting here, in a group like this, when we're bending the numbers and doing whatever we can do to and focused on numbers, it's pretty easy to forget, just what we have out there in our community. We're we should be pretty thankful for what we got. And I did notice that, we do have a lot of local talent, within our community. You saw it there, certainly within City Hall. It was evident that, we've got a couple of actresses that I think that, we have to pay a little bit more attention to her. We could lose them to Hollywood. So, yeah. Okay, we're going to move on here. So today's meeting is the next in our 5-year financial plan budget sessions. So I'm going to turn the meeting over to Director of Finance, Charlotte Osborne, to work through the remainder of the agenda. Charlotte, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through to council. So I think the agenda is pretty self-explanatory. We're going to start with the library, and Ursula is here to provide council with a presentation, and I will turn it over to Ursula.
Ursula, just before you start, I want
Yeah.
to just make sure that Councillor Blissett can hear us and we can hear her. Norma,
yeah.
yep, you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, loud and clear, thank you.
Yeah.
I apologize, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so good afternoon, Mayor Price and members of council. I'm here today to talk to you about one of the most essential services that the city provides, our public library. And our library board chair, Leanne Crane, sends her regrets. She wanted to be here today. Unfortunately, the cold that is going around laid her low. So this presentation will provide an overview of the 2025 budget amount that's in the current 5-year financial plan. It will show how the library is using other funding sources to extend services and programs, and I will review the increases to core operating expenses that led to the library board's revised 2025 request. Okay, the library's mandate is to provide people with barrier-free access to information and opportunities to learn and share ideas with each other. Local and provincial government funding provides the essential core support that allows the library to fulfill its mandate. These funds are supplemented by donations and one-time grants, plus internally generated revenue. The amount for library service support included in the city's current 5-year financial plan was set at the start of the 2023 budget process, that is, back in June 2022. In the 2.5 years since, inflationary and other increases to operating expenses have exceeded this 2% projection. The library has taken steps to reduce costs where possible, even if only by $5, while continuously adapting and improving services and programs to meet the evolving needs of our community. These approaches have made it possible for staff to offer more services and programs for patrons, including being open 7 days a week with almost no increase to core staffing levels over the past 16 years. In 2008, the library had the equivalent of 10.1 full-time positions, excluding those funded by grants. In 2024, the library operated with the equivalent of 10.3 full-time positions. In 2025, the library will once again rely on one-time funding, mainly from the Provincial Enhancement Grant, to enhance direct services and programs to the public and support staff safety and professional development. The Enhancement Grant, unfortunately, cannot cover increases to operating costs because there is no assurance from the province that it will increase its operational funding for public libraries starting in 2026. So even after reducing expenses where possible and using one-time grants to supplement service levels, the projected increase to the operating costs exceeds 2%, driven mainly by financial pressures in 3 areas: employment-related expenses, building insurance and maintenance, and technology licenses. The cumulative impact of the cost of living adjustment rates in the collective agreement ratified last year accounts for most of the increase. While higher rates for WorkSafe BC, Canada Pension Plan, and employment insurance premiums cause these expenses to grow even more. Building-related costs create more pressure. In 2022, the city engaged an adjuster to revalue the entire building that houses the library. This resulted in insurance premiums jumping significantly. After almost 19 years of operations, aging infrastructure is making itself felt in the form of increased maintenance costs. For example, by 2024, about 1/3 of the total lighting fixtures in the library had failed and were replaced. The final factor is the increasing cost of mission-critical software licenses. For example, the cost of the library's accounting and payroll software has increased by 24.9% since 2022. The cumulative impact of these pressures is that the library will need $51,034 more than is included in the current 5-year financial plan to maintain 2024 service levels in the coming year. The Library Board recognizes that this is a significant request to make of the city and the regional district of the East Kootenay. For that reason, we are actively attempting to secure an increase in the provincial funding for library operations to alleviate the burden on local governments. Provincial public library funding was cut by 25% in 2009 and has remained frozen at that level ever since. The entire public library community in BC has been actively advocating to secure an increase to this funding. Activities we have undertaken include UBCM resolutions made almost every year since 2009, calling on the government to increase library funding. Presentations to the Select Standing Committee on Finance and Government Services, which resulted in its repeated recommendations to government to increase library funding, and meetings over the years with ministers in charge of the Public Libraries branch and with MLAs around the province, including those in our area, to highlight the need for increased funding. While these efforts resulted in a number of one-time grants since 2020, of which the enhancement grant is the most significant, core provincial operational funding for libraries remains unchanged. And so the provincial library community, including the Cranbrook Public Library, will continue its efforts throughout 2025 to actively advocate for an increase of ongoing provincial funding starting in 2026. This presentation has focused on funding because, of course, these funds make it possible for the library to fulfill its mandate. Every day, the library strives to provide opportunities for people to learn, explore, and get answers to their questions, to foster a love of reading, to reduce the sense of social isolation, to provide a safe space that welcomes all, and, as always, the library has tens of thousands of books, films, and more for people to borrow. The library is committed to the city's strategic goals to enrich the quality of life for all who live in Cranbrook and to deliver effective and efficient programs and services to residents every day. The library understands that the city is facing incredible financial pressures in all aspects of its operations. The library has taken what steps it can to reduce operating costs without cutting service levels. In 2025, the Cranbrook Public Library celebrates 100 years of service. But what we are truly excited about is continuing to provide residents in the communities we serve with daily access to the full range of library programs and services in a safe and welcoming environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ursula. Council, questions? Comments? Councillor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. Ursula, with the increase in funding, are we also seeing an increase in usage of the library over the last year?
Yes, definitely. In the past year, we have seen the number of people visiting the library, so this is compared to 2023. The number of people visiting the library in person increased by 8% year over year. The number of physical items borrowed, so that's the actual books on the shelves, has increased by 17%. And the number of questions people ask us increased by 32% year over year.
Supplemental. And you're also focusing more on like digital assets as well, too,
Yes.
right? Do you have any statistics on those as far as?
Yes. So last year, people borrowed from our digital collection. So this is our ebooks, digital magazines, digital audiobooks. They downloaded them or borrowed them, I should say, total of 54,439 times.
Wow.
Which is up 14%, and it actually represents almost a quarter of our total circulation at this stage.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. Comment and a question. So in terms of the format of the report and then the slideshow, I liked the breakdown where you broke down the 80-20 percent funding between the city and the RDK. So for the written report for future years, I think it would be helpful. We can all do the math on the 80-20 breakout, but it'd be helpful just to list that so we can see the numbers we're talking about for the city. So yeah, it's the $51,034 is the total amount, but for the city for 2025, it's 40,827. So just to include that breakdown in the report, I think would be helpful.
All right, thank
Yeah.
you.
Because we, of course, are talking about the city budget. So a question regarding the provincial enhancement grant. Certainly very helpful to have that money coming in, but as you noted, it's grant funding and it's not forever funding. So I am concerned with the numbers that we're looking at from 2026 to 2029 because of the end of that provincial enhancement grant. Yeah, so you've noted that from 2026 through 2029, that covers additional staff hours needed to fulfill newly assigned responsibilities to existing part-time positions. And for 2024 and 2025, those hours were funded through this library enhancement grant. So what concerns me, and it's not just for the library, it's across the city, when we get grant funding and we spend it on what we're meant to spend it on, but when the grant funding ends, I'm concerned about the sustainability of then automatically trying to absorb those functions into the existing city budget. Like I have concerns about the sustainability and how realistic that is, particularly when we're really sharpening our pencil for this budget year, but also for the coming budget years. So I do have concerns about, I think we need to think very carefully about absorbing those costs that have come about because of this one-time enhancement grant. And as part of that, my other concern is for us to think carefully for the library and other city functions as well, but what is our core function? It's great when we have a grant that we can do more, we can enhance things, but when that grant ends, I think we need to think about refocusing on our core services. And we may need to let go of some of those enhancements that we did when we had the grant. So do you have any comments on those concerns?
So yes, definitely. As I said, that is front of mind for the library board. And really by including this in here, what the board really wanted to do was provide a sense of how much the total impact of the enhancement that it's having on the library at this moment. So all the activities, the current staffing levels that you see, all the activities that you see in the library include both our core services and our enhancement grant add-ons. And definitely with those part-time positions, the way that they've been framed within the libraries, that these are temporary part-time positions that end with the end of the enhancement grant. What this submission is laying out is in effect our best case scenario. And I mean, ultimately what we would be hoping is that the provincial government will ultimately increase its funding to public libraries, its ongoing operational funding to public libraries to cover that money rather than coming to the city. So in effect, by this submission is that we just wanted to really make council aware of this is the impact. This is the value of everything that the enhancement that is offering to our community at this time. And in effect, if the library were doing everything that we're doing right now, without it, this is how much more it would cost. So in a way, it's really showing more the additional value that the enhancement grant provides, rather than saying, yes, we're going to come cap in hand to council for this additional funding.
Thank you. That is a helpful clarification. I think just in terms of this chart, probably my suggestion, maybe for future years, or if we have future documents about this, would be to break that out, that here's the enhancement amount, here's the core service amount. I just have concerns about if we're approving this package up to 2029, to someone who just looks at it, it looks like the city is agreeing to pay that amount, and I'm uncomfortable with that. So I would rather, and maybe it might have been an option to explicitly include, here's sort of the enhancement scenario, here's the core services only scenario where we don't get an increase in our provincial grant and the enhancement grant ends. So just to be a bit more explicit, because just having a look at this, it does look like the city is agreeing forever to just absorb those costs. And I do not think that that is realistic.
Thank you. Councillor Stetzky.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So I know the library has been working hard to expand programming to, in essence, include all ages from very young to seniors. Do you want to just give us a quick summary of some of those programs? And potentially, I would think some of those programs are at risk unless funding continues and increases somewhat.
Yes, so our programs actually start at birth. We have, it's called Books for Babies. And this is a bag that includes two board books, plus some other resources that we, through the public nursing staff, that they give out to everybody at the 1 month mark, I think. And the reasoning behind this is that past studies showed that a lot of children do not have access to any books in their family home. And they often don't have access to books until they get kindergarten. So through this program, what we want to ensure is that every child in Cranbrook and area C has at least one access to at least one book. So that's our first program. And then we have programs, as you say, for all ages, whether it's preschool story time, toddler time, baby nap time, summer reading club for children, teens, and adults. We do author reading, sometimes special education seminars, of course, our public tech training, helping people access information online, just become more comfortable with using technology and how to use it safely, those kind of sessions. And then we also have programs for seniors, and those tend to focus more heavily on reducing the sense of social isolation. So encouraging people to come together and share ideas and talk. And we also do a lot of outreach work with partners such as the Akam community, the Ktunaxa Nation, and of course organizations like Columbia Basin Alliance for Literacy, the senior sector, and things like that. And then we also do outreach programs at our senior care homes. About once a month, where we bring books out to places like Christmas Street Village, and also do an activity in there for the seniors that live there. Oh, okay. So that's an example of some of the programs that we offer. Without the enhancement grant funding, the programs that we start are things like the Senior Men's Social, which meets every Tuesday, our outreach activities in the extended care facilities. We would be definitely reducing drastically, almost eliminating the public technology training that we provide. And we would also have to curtail our activities, outreach activities to Akam, and also reduce the number of activities we do related to the Summer Reading Club for all ages.
Thank you, Larissa. Councillor Papa.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Ursula, does ACOM, you mentioned ACOM services provider, do they provide any funding resources back to the library?
Not at this time because they are under a different type of legislation than the city and the RAC. However, it is something that the library board has identified to work with the city, because we are a municipal library, to identify ways that we could work with the ACOM to formalize that relationship. And certainly there are some libraries in the province that do have those kind of agreements in place.
Thank you. I would encourage that.
Further, Councillor Bissett, anything? Nope, okay. Well, thank you, Ursula. I guess where we're at right now is if we were to make a decision today, council's going to either hold at 2%, which we've been doing in the past, and that's built into the current budget, or increase the request that's being asked today. And personally, I think we've got a ways to go through the budget process. Where, you know, we don't have real numbers yet. And I'd suggest that, you know, it's highly unlikely we can make that decision today. So, council, anybody want to make a motion that we either hold or increase today? No? Okay. So thank you, Ursula. As always, you're spot on with your presentations, and I understand it. I was on the library board for a while, and I'm going to tell you, we've got one of the best managed and staffed libraries in the province, bar none. You know, it's acknowledged throughout the province by their peers. And, you know, being on the board, I know you guys work to the nickel, so you wouldn't be here unless you needed it. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Back to you, Charlotte.
Thank you, Mayor Price. Thank you, Ursula. So next up on the agenda is a review of a request that came through from the Cranbrook History Center, or the Cranbrook Archives Museum and Landmark Society. Thank you. So there are 3 requests on the in the letter. So what I'd like to propose is that I read a resolution that has council receive the request, and then we'll move through each of the items in that letter. So the resolution to receive the item will be that council received the Cranbrook Archives and Landmark Museum, CAML in brackets, request dated January 17, 2025, pertaining to the license of occupation between the city and the museum, loan repayment and service agreement.
Sorry.
Lynette, Councillor Ray moving, seconder.
Seconder, Councillor Peabody. Discussion?
Okay, thank you so much, council. And
Oh, sorry.
Okay, just to
Councillor
clarify,
Peabody.
we're just voting that we've received it.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, correct.
Did you read that again, Charlotte?
Of course. That council received the Cranbrook Archives and Landmark Museum, CAML in brackets, request dated January 17, 2025, pertaining to the license of occupation between the city and the museum, loan repayment and the service agreement.
Okay. Discussion. I guess at what point, Charlotte, are we going to have a discussion? I believe that there was some direction from council for staff to look at an alternative model.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
She has a series of motions.
Oh, you got a series of motions you're going to bring with this?
Yes, I do.
Okay, yeah,
Mr.
my apologies.
Yeah,
Okay.
No worries.
Okay.
I should have.
Skipping ahead here, like,
I should have
right on.
spoken up.
okay, thank you.
So the first request is with Thank you.
Moving right along.
The first request presented by the society refers to their license of occupation. So it's a little bit detailed. So what staff would like to suggest is that council refer those requests back to staff and have them review the requests and bring them back for comment. Okay?
Okay.
So I have a resolution that speaks to that. That council refer the license of occupation request to staff for review and comment.
Mover, Counselor Pop-Up, Counselor Stetsky. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That's carried.
Thank you. The next request is for a new repayment schedule on the loan. So the society is proposing a new schedule where they pay $14,000 per year, $7,000 twice a year for over a period of 10 years. And the payments would be made April 1st and October 1st. So I do have a resolution about that, or on that mirrors the society's request. The thing I think that we need to maybe, or council needs to discuss is what happens if those payments are not made. So there was no consideration for that in the previous two repayment agreements that we had with the society. So council can leave it, can either decide that there's a penalty or can suggest that something along the lines of 60 days after non-payment, the agreement they're in breach of the agreement and something needs to happen.
Okay, discussion, Counselor Stetsky, Counselor Ray.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't want to presuppose a negative outcome, so I think I'd like to just leave things as per your proposal, and let's worry about penalties if they don't come through on time.
Councillor Stetsky through Mayor Price, penalties may not be the only option. The other option might be that after 60 days of non-payment, everybody comes back to the table. So there's no penalty, but because we've had two repayment agreements and we both have been offside several times.
Counselor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. I wonder for this item if we might want to consider a motion to refer this to staff also, just rather than doing it on the fly, to have I'd feel better if we had even a brief staff report looking at the options rather than doing it on the fly and kind of trying to craft a motion as we go. So that would be my preference.
Thank you. Counselor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I guess one question and one comment. Charlotte, to date, we haven't charged the History Center any interest on this loan. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. So, yeah, I would agree with Councillor Ray that maybe this is a good idea to go back to staff and then come back to council with a couple different options. Personally, like even though I do sit on the History Board as a council liaison, I would be in favor of having some sort of either like penalty of interest or something along the lines, just to make sure there is a little bit of pressure to pay it on time. Because I think with anything, if there's no penalty, then it's a lot easier to blow off and not do any payments like what has happened in the past, where if there is a little bit of a financial, slap on the wrist, then they might be a little bit more willing to make sure the payment is there.
Thank you. We have Counselor Pop-Up and Counselor Graham.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Excuse me. So I'm one of the originals on council at the time when we made that loan. And my sense was it was a goodwill gesture loan. Here's the money, you need it, and we'll come up with some loose, if you will, terms and conditions on repayment, knowing full well that should a payment not occur, what are we going to do about it, right? So if you want to draw up some some options here for actions to be taken. I'd look forward to looking at them, but that was the background, the history on this. It was a goodwill loan, and hopefully we'll get our money back eventually.
Thank you. Councillor Graham.
Yeah, I'm just curious if we put ourselves in any kind of issue of issuing a zero interest loan. I know we can't even do that for ourselves. So how do we go about that? And are we putting ourselves in any kind of issue with any of the audits or anything else that we go through? I know that we had our auditor here and things, but just curious on that and if that does raise a flag or not.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Through Mayor Price, I do believe that we posted a notice when the loan was initially issued, and we posted the terms of the loan. This is a society, so it's not a for-profit. I mean, ideally, there would have been interest, but I suspect that the organization would have struggled to pay the interest. But I do believe that there was public notice made, so we did follow the community charter in terms of posting the information that we were providing assistance, a loan.
Thank you. Councillor Bissett, any questions before I go through the order again? No, thank you. Councillor Ray?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to refer this to staff to develop options and return to council with those. If anyone's interested in seconding that.
Yeah. Okay. Do we have a motion to defer? Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you very much. That's passed. We will defer the motion.
Thank you, Council and Mayor Price. So the last item is a request from the society to Council consider a new service agreement with a term of 5 years and annual escalators of 5%. The city is interested in looking at options that provide the society with complete freedom from oversight by the city, with the exception of council deciding whether funding should be awarded. The city is also interested in options that create incentives for the society to seek alternate sources of funding. An alternative to the service agreement would be a 3-year funding agreement with 2 options to renew for 3 years at the city's discretion. Rather than annual increases, the funding would be reduced $10,000 a year. Assuming council agrees to an award of $120,000 in 2025, and should both renewals be exercised, the grant amount in the final year, 2033, would be $40,000. Eliminating the service agreement model converts the funding to a grant. Council has contemplated a cap on individual grants. While the level of the cap hasn't been formally discussed, it is expected that the recommendation would be in the range of $20,000 to $30,000 per applicant. By entering into the proposed funding agreement, there would be no immediate impact to the History Centre. The subsequent annual reductions are relatively small, giving the society opportunity to identify alternate sources of funding. The 3-year term with renewals gives council and the board opportunity for timely check-ins. The structure also does not tie the next council to the agreement.
Councillor Graham.
I like that recommendation. That's exactly where it needs to go. I think it should be done like that with a reduction to 0.
Okay.
Thank you.
Seconder on the recommendation, Councillor Stetsky. Discussion.
Yeah, so,
Councillor Peabody.
sorry, I thought you were recognizing my question.
Oh, okay. Councillor Stetsky, then Councillor Peabody.
Yeah, thank you. Ultimately, I guess I'd like to see those options presented formally. I certainly agree that we need a different funding model. Having reviewed the model that we currently have in place, we are way too involved in their business, in their day-to-day business. And I much prefer a model similar to what we have with Key City Theatre, for example, than what we currently have in place. So definitely need a different model. In terms of whether that goes to 0 or not, that's a different discussion from my perspective.
Thank you. Councillor Peabody, then Councillor Ray.
There. Sorry, Charlotte, can you just clarify? In the motion you were making, you were talking about a reduction in, I guess, in their grant. But then you still said it was 120,000?
Councillor Peabody through Mayor Price. So in 2024, the grant that the society received was 121 and change thousand.
Okay,
The proposal is that, and it's not a recommend, so it's not a formal recommendation as Councillor Stetsky, it's just an idea.
okay,
So the idea, the option being presented provides for $120,000 in 2025. So just a very slight decrease in 2025. And then in 2026, the amount would be 110,000. In 2027, the amount would be 100, all the way down to the recommendation or the option ends in 2033 at 40. And that was felt to be, it's a long-term agreement. It provides ample opportunity for new sources of revenue to be identified. It allows, as I mentioned, for timely check-ins. It anticipates a cap on grants to individual applicants. The struggle with likening it to the Key City Theatre is that it isn't like the Key City Theatre, because the Key City Theatre has the underlying agreement with the school district. So that supersedes sort of our little grant policy. Pardon me, that was poor choice of words. Our grant policy, and it's separate from that. The school district arrangement for the Key City Theatre with the city is separate, albeit out of the same grant pot, as Councillor Ray has indicated, can be confusing for members of the public. This is not like that. There is no underlying agreement for the city to support the History Center. So for that reason, this declining award, should we turn it into a grant, would then align with what staff have heard from council around the grant pot, that it be limited and not set the History Center aside as something that it isn't, that it doesn't have some special recognition, unless council wants to create that, but currently that doesn't exist. So that's where the 120 comes from, is to basically change very little from 2024 for 2025 and give the organization opportunity to adjust to a different funding model from the city.
okay, which would have a lot of challenges, obviously. Like just looking at our municipality and us trying to reduce our costs of running, the city of Cranbrook. It would come with challenges, but yeah, thank you.
Councillor Brissette.
Thank you, Your Worship. This would not prevent the History Center, though, from coming to us and making a presentation for additional funds, say next year, if they don't think they could manage with $10,000 less, that they could come and possibly request more, or request in the grants to organization format. Would that be possible?
Councillor Blissett, through Mayor Price, what had been envisioned was, if there was going to be, if the society wanted to come forward and ask council for, say, seed money to help them with a grant application for something, that would be outside of this arrangement. That could be held outside of this arrangement. It is not intended to be, it is intended to be, this is your grant for operating. Everybody. The intent would be that there would be somewhat stricter guidelines around those additional asks. The 3-year the 3-year term was arrived at such that, you know, it wasn't going to be 5 years before it could be re-examined. And in thinking about your question, Councillor Blissett, perhaps there are some, if council wishes to create some safety chutes in the first few years, given that this would be a new arrangement. But the intent is to reduce the overall amount that the History Centre receives to be more in line with other grant recipients, ultimately.
So the only thing I would think, like to comment is, even just by holding the amount steady at 120,000, in theory, that could be a reduction with inflation, right, as time goes on. So that's something to consider as well.
Councillor Blissett, through Mayor Price, of course, part of the challenge with this is, and is to try to find a way to make this align with everyone, with how everyone else is treated. And because this is something that we struggle with all the time, is we have these legacy issues. And I understand that that's not necessarily the History Centre's problem, quite frankly. That is something that the city has created. But if we are going to turn it into a grant, and we have a grant policy, then ideally, organizations that receive a grant from the city should all receive similar treatment, unless we can identify some characteristic that would set this organization aside. I speak from very personal experience in trying to kind of fit all of these legacy issues into a policy that is fairly administered for all applicants. So that's the struggle. If council wants to try to find a way to say that somehow the History Centre needs to be set aside and should not be subject to a cap under the grant program, staff would have to think about that. I'm not sure what that would look like. I don't know what would set them aside.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So before I move through the councilors, a quick comment. I agree with the point you just made, CFO Osborne. This is a one-off arrangement that the city's made, and we haven't made any arrangements like this prior to or since. So, you know, we have put ourselves in the situation, and, you know, just by the nature of the funding and the expectations on the return, and, you know, Councillor Graham asked about interest, no interest. So, I mean, it's as good a deal as you can get. And we know that they've had difficulty paying in the past, but we're giving them $120,000 a year for past number of years. We're actually making our payment. We're giving them money that we are to make that payment. Really, the city is. So I agree with you. We need a level playing field in the city. These one-off deals, there was a time for them. I truly believe that, you know, in the city as we're growing, we've hit a point in time with the number of users and the number of groups in the city that come to the city and are relying on funding, grant funding at whatever level. It's getting more common than not. So, you know, we have to level this playing field, and we've got a set of rules. This is the only group that we are working outside of the set of rules. So I totally agree. We got to try and bring them in line with what we're doing. This is a city liability right now. It's not a huge one, but in fact, it is a city liability in terms of finance with the dollars. We've got a responsibility to limit that liability. And I think, you know, shifting how we're doing business, we don't have a choice to be responsible to the public and to be responsible to the organization, you know. I think it's time that we did make this change. So I totally agree with what you just stated, Charlotte. So I'll move on. We got Councillor Ray, Councillor Setsy, Councillor Graham,
Thank you, Mayor.
and Councillor Papa.
A couple comments and then a point of clarification. So I think there's a great deal of merit in this proposal. I understand the concerns about a gradually declining grant. However, I think the corresponding benefit for the History Center is that they would be in control of their destiny. They will not be being managed under this agreement through the city. And so, you know, on a spectrum, we have paternalistic micromanaging all the way to trust-based philanthropy. So making this change would, I believe, be a positive shift towards trust-based philanthropy. These folks know their business. They're the experts in their business. We're not the experts in running a history center. That's not our job. Let's let them run their business. So even though the funding is decreasing, I believe there's a benefit to the History Center to be able to run their business and be accountable in a much more general sense rather than using city resources to add another level of management to the History Center because of this service agreement. In addition, I think would be a benefit to the city to not have our economic development officer responsible for supervising this service agreement so that our economic development officer can get out there and do great things for the city related to economic development. So I see benefits to this change for sure. So in terms of process, I just like to clarify, I think what CFO Osborne shared was a report. Well, I do not believe we have a motion on the table. I would like to make a motion that, again, we refer, not defer. We refer this issue to staff just for a written report, just so everybody can read the details and have a chance to reflect. So bring a written report back to council for consideration. So I would move, if anyone's interested in seconding, to refer this to staff to come back with a written report for a decision.
Can I get a seconder? Councillor Popoff is seconding that. Further discussion on this? We had Councillor Stetsky, did you want to?
Sure, just a couple of points of clarification. So you mentioned that the Key City Theatre arrangement is different because of the school board involvement. When I say we need a different arrangement, we need to get out of micromanaging what happens at the Cranbrook History Center. When I talk about the model from Key City Theatre, they have some reporting obligations, but we don't manage them or attempt to manage them day by day. But is not our situation with the Cranbrook History Center different in terms of the land ownership? So I don't think they are actually similar to all the other agencies that we grant money to. I think there's some uniqueness to this situation as well.
Councillor Stetsky through Mayor Price, absolutely. The land that they have a license of occupation as they referred to in their request. So, you know, there's another support avenue that the city is involved in is I'm not sure exactly what they pay, if it's $10 for every 5 years or $1 a year or something like that. But, and then of course they receive permissive tax exemptions. So, you know, there's a lot of support from the city of Cranbrook aimed at the History Center and you know, probably rightly so. But in terms of the land, like there is no agreement, certainly none that I'm aware of, where the city is obligated to fund operations at the History Center.
Thank you, Charlotte. Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you. I was just kind of curious about the merit of having them appear again as a delegation. And the reason I say that is because they've now taken over the fort and they're operating a lot bigger of an umbrella. Maybe their needs have changed, things have changed. So I think like I would like to have a conversation because I think that it's a beautiful marriage. It's been something I talked about years ago when I was on the board out there a long time ago. But I think it warrants a conversation with them because a lot has changed since this letter has been written. And so I think that there is opportunities for a deeper conversation and how this can be a benefit all around. But I think we'd be remiss to not have a follow-up conversation before we make drastic decisions.
Thank you. Councillor Papa. You're good? Further? Okay. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. So yes, that will be deferred.
Great discussion. Thank you very much, Council. Next up, we have Caitlin, who is going to present the organics collection option.
So the purpose of this presentation is to review organics collection options within the community and also answer some questions that came up on the January 20th Committee of the Whole meeting. So the curbside collection program was a project that was proposed for 2030 in the budget, so not even included in this 5-year financial plan. But what happened was on December 3rd, the ministry provided an update that there's grant funding available for a curbside collection program, which is why staff is bringing this project forward now for discussion and consideration. We want to take advantage of grant funding if this is an option that the city decides to go in. So the Clean BC Organics Funding Program, they provide funding for organic processing infrastructure, as well as for residential curbside collection. So the last time this funding was available was in 2019. So it's available again this fiscal year and next fiscal year. And after that, we're unsure if there will be funding available. So through the residential curbside collection program, it's for 2/3 of the funding for eligible items such as curbside and kitchen collection bins, communication and educational outreach packages and programs, as well as the initial distribution of those funded materials. When looking at our current curbside services, just as a refresher for everybody, we do provide weekly garbage collection. We have 3 full-time staff for this, where 1 full-time provides coverage for vacation and sick time, and they're in doing other public works functions outside of that. And we have 2 working full-time to collect garbage. And we have 2 collection vehicles and 1 spare. So we rotate through those vehicles just to extend the lifespan of all of them. And our recycling program is bi-weekly, and we have 1 full-time person that's contracted out through our contractor, and they provide the collection vehicle for that. So staff looked at 5 different organics collection options. So there were 2 ways to look at central composting bins. There's the home composter incentive programs, community gardens and urban farms, as well as a curbside collection program. So I'll go through each of the item in detail and provide a bit of a summary and some pros and cons and some financial considerations for each of those. So the central composting bin, this one would be for consideration at a transfer station or the landfill. In discussion with staff at the regional district, the central subregion landfill, which is where the organics processing facility will be located, is not designed for public access or to be received as a receiving facility for residents to bring their organics. The Cranbrook transfer station is going to continue to accept yard waste and garden waste, but at this time, kitchen scraps are not going to be accepted at the Cranbrook transfer station for organics processing. So that option isn't really something that's viable at this time. Another option is looking at community composting bins distributed in neighborhoods. So similar to like the yellow bin program with recycling. Through this program, you'd see bins located on city property or in road right-of-ways, and they would be dispersed throughout the community in neighborhoods. You'd have to do a bit of an analysis to figure out where the best location would be for that. Some of the challenges that come with this is managing those bins for collection. So it's really challenging to monitor the volume because you don't know how frequent people are going to be using those bins. Someone might be stockpiling at home, bring a significant volume, and the bin is full, more full than you'd expect, a week ahead of schedule. You also have to consider the collection frequency, and it's a lot more challenging to monitor contamination. When we have curbside programs, we are able to see the contents of each bin, and we can monitor contamination that way. Whereas with community collection bins, residents or users are able to just dispose of contents without any oversight. We also run into challenges with management of bins for pests, so such as bees, insects, and wasps. So those are all things that we have to take into consideration if we were to have these kinds of bins located throughout the community. In order to get financials for this, we would be required to go out for RFP after we've determined how many bins we would need and whether we're purchasing or renting those bins. And we'd also need someone to collect those bins because we don't have the equipment to do that. Any materials collected through this type of program would be accepted at the organics receiving facility, so we do have somewhere to bring that content. District of Invermere and City of Fernie, they did review those options. So just a bit of a scale, City of Fernie, when they were reviewing the option, it'd be about 8 bins throughout the City of Fernie in order to provide a program like this. And then the District of Invermere also did look at it. And when I was discussing with the regional district staff, part of the reason Invermere and Fernie went with the curbside program was due to the management of the bins and the contamination and the different pests that come along with it. And in 2019, the City of Vernon, they did do a pilot program with community bins, and it was a successful program, but they ran out of financial resources to continue the program, so they ceased it. And in 2022, they started a curbside organics collection program. Another option is to look at home composter incentive programs. So this would be where the city provides incentive for residents to purchase a home composter. This would be managed similar to our rain barrel rebate program. Super easy to manage, very minimal staff resources to implement a program of this type. The things that would be required to be done is just specify the type of composter. So are all composters eligible or just ones that are inside the home, or can we also include outdoor composting bins? The funding for this would be dependent on council's direction. How much funding would we be willing to put towards a program like this? The Rain Barrel Rebate Program, we offer 100 rebates at $50 a rebate, so it's $5,000. But rain barrels are a lot more inexpensive than a home composter. So same format, we would allot the number of incentives available annual, first come, first served basis, and we would fund a percentage of the cost. So looking at the cost of home composters, they're anywhere from, $300 to $800, depending on how sophisticated and big that you want those composters. So typical would be like 50% to a maximum of $250, because that's about half of the price of something that's inexpensive. If we went this route, we could look at funding from the Solid Waste Reserve or through our local government climate action program funding, which is funding we receive from the province. The benefits to this type of program is residents can use the compost at home, and it's very minimal staff resources to implement something like this. And also the city's not responsible for any of the care and maintenance of these types of devices. The City of Nelson did have a pre-treated organics pilot program, and that started in the summer of 2023. So how that program works is the City of Nelson partnered with Food Cycler, And the city actually owns the home composting devices that are provided to the residents. And it's currently still in a pilot program. So they're kind of doing it by neighborhood. And what happens is that soil amendment is either used by residents at home or they bring it to a designated drop-off facility, and then that's transported to a processing facility. Some of the more challenging things with these types of programs is that the city is responsible for those assets. Those are considered city assets, but they belong in people's homes. So we would be responsible for maintenance and repair of these devices if we were to do something like this. And one of the challenges is when people move, they take things with them. So we would just be hoping and trusting that people would leave those for the next homeowner to have. The City of Nelson did receive funding through the Green Municipal Fund and Columbia Basin Trust to make this more feasible for them financially. When we look at the food cycler costs, it's about $500 per household, plus maintenance and repair costs. So some of the maintenance costs would be filters that are required to be replaced monthly, and those are provided to residents free of charge. One of the things too for this type of program is we'd have to determine if this is something that is open to all households within the city. Is it open to people who live in apartment buildings and multifamily dwellings, or is it only for people who receive curbside services? Just for a bit of a scale, at $500 per household, we have 6,300 approximately households that we provide curbside services to, which is about $3.2 million. So it's a significant cost if you don't have third-party funding to do something like this. And funding here could also come from our solid waste reserve, any provincial or federal programs, or through our LGCAP funding, which is the Climate Action Program funding. The City of Kelowna has gone a bit of a different route for our home composter incentive programs, where there's a company called Lomi, and it's local to Kelowna, and they provide a food recycling program, and that started just in May of 2024. So this is managed and operated by Lomi, and residents register for this service and pay a monthly subscription fee, similar to like a Netflix or Amazon Prime type account. So Lomi manages everything. They provide the device to the residents, a storage bin, all the filters, and they pick it up at a $30 a month fee. And residents can also drop off at partner locations, and that the contents from those home composter devices are brought to local farms and partners to use as their soil amendments. One thing to note is that City of Kelowna residents, they do receive yard waste collection through their curbside programs, which I think is managed by their regional district. So this is something that's completely third party to the municipality. Another option is the community garden and urban farms, where residents drop off composting at community gardens or the new urban farm or other urban farms within the region. So currently residents are able to drop off compost at the Cranbrook Public Produce Garden. We do advertise that a bit on our social media channels just through like our climate action media. In discussions with the people running and managing the urban farm, they are exploring funding for a composter. They're just awaiting grant results on this. And what that composter is it's a contained composting unit. So there aren't any smells, and it's going to be, so like animals and stuff can't get in it. So it's a very sophisticated unit, and it is quite expensive. In the current business plan with Urban Farm is they're planning for restaurants to be able to bring compost materials to them, but not residents. So that's been their business plan at the start. But when speaking with them, if the city is interested in partnering with some sort of drop-off location or program, they're more than happy to engage in that type of conversation with us. The composting product that will be provided by Urban Farm, once it's the soil amendment, it will be available for residents to purchase though. And for other drop-off locations within the community, we would have to contact local organizations and urban farms for their interest, and then just figure out logistics there. I have heard there's apps. In my research about apps, I found one, but no one within our even in the Kootenay region are utilizing those. There's a few in Calgary and a few in the Okanagan and throughout the world. And then the other option is curbside collection. So doing a residential curbside organics collection program. So if the city was to go this option, we would look at doing biweekly garbage because we're decreasing the volume of material collected in our garbage program. Recycling would continue biweekly, and organics would be weekly from the months of March to October and biweekly from November to February. This is similar format to many municipalities throughout BC as well as in the region. This program would see the purchase of animal-resistant curbside collection carts, kitchen collection bins, and an automated collection vehicle. And we would have to develop communication and educational outreach, update our city's solid waste bylaw, and rollout of the funded materials to residents. So anything with this, it would be the same format we had with the recycling program and the automated garbage collection program. This would be rolled out identical to those. When we're looking at the capital costs of a curbside collection program, with Clean BC Organics funding, they cover 2/3 of the eligible costs, and the city is required to cover the other capital costs, so the 1/3 and anything that's not eligible. Things that aren't eligible is an automated collection vehicle and any of our spare parts. So when looking at this, we'd have about just over $600,000 that would be eligible for grant funding, and that does include a 15% contingency. And the city would be required with the capital cost of $800,000, keeping in mind that $500,000 of that is due to requiring the purchase of an automated collection vehicle. So doing a program like this based on our current resident curbside collection numbers is approximately $1.4 million. One thing that staff would recommend is that the additional 1/3 cost of the animal-resistant collection carts that we seek funding support from the regional district to help cover those costs. The regional district, they did provide us funding for our recycling carts when we did our curbside recycling program. And they also provided funding to the city of Kimberley for their collection carts for their organics programming. Looking at the operational costs, so we would have the capital cost of the $1.4 million, and we would require $71 per year per household in order to provide this service. And then just a note, which we also had in our report recommendation when we did come to council a few weeks ago, is that our solid waste services, it's a very successful area in our public works department. With the transition to these automated collection services, we are able to reduce our risk of injury. So we're seeing a decrease in back and shoulder injuries and slip, trips, and falls because our staff aren't getting out of the equipment and they're not having to lift heavy bags. It also provides us opportunities for staff to gradually return to work. And it also is providing opportunities for those staff who have increasing seniority throughout the city to be in less labor-intensive positions. So they're not, outside doing shoveling and working in holes. They're able to be in a collection vehicle collecting waste. These positions, they also have a positive influence in the public, and our staff have put time aside to attend community events and career days, even on the weekends. I also wanted to take the opportunity to talk about the solid waste service fees, just with conversations with the regional district staff on how these fees are distributed. So what happens is the regional district requisitions the city to collect the fees for solid waste services from the city's residents. So those fees are based on the assessed rate per $1,000. And that fee is the same for everybody within the central subregion. So the people here in Cranbrook, they pay the same amount. So the assessed rate per $1,000 is people in Area C, people in Jaffrey, people in Kimberley. And what that fee covers is more than just the City of Cranbrook's landfill. It also includes all of the recycling programs, all of the transfer stations within the central subregion, the oil programs, the mattress programs, every type of solid waste service that the regional district provides. So when we're looking at the fee for disposing of organics or a fee decrease for not having as much waste brought to the landfill, that rate doesn't change because everybody contributes the same amount to all solid waste services within the central subregion. And those rates are dependent based on the levels of service the regional district's providing, as well as the operational costs that they see. So yes, we won't technically receive a decrease in the amount of funding to pay the regional district for solid waste services, but we also won't see a change in funding required because we're using the organics. So everybody pays the same amount within the central subregion to have those services available. So next steps is whether council would like to provide direction on any of the options reviewed. And if so, we would come forward, whether it's if it's like a curbside program, we would have to come to council for a resolution for the grant and financial support, or if it's one of the other options, we would do that through this budget process. And if it's a complete deferral of the service, we would have that for consideration for the budget discussions next year.
Councillor Popoff.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So thank you for this presentation. So I've learned more about composting and options than I thought I ever needed to know. So I think you're asking us to anticipate which version or any version does the public want, and what costs are they prepared to pay, either as a user or as a general taxes. And I don't think we have that knowledge to tell you which of these versions we think is important, because we haven't heard from the public. To my 11th year on council, the public haven't been banging down the door saying we want composting services of any of these options. So before we go into, my recommendation is we need to think about this, and we also need to consult with the public on what's their awareness of the importance of composting to start with, and then what, if anything, do they want the city to participate in to assist them with composting. Me having a backyard and a garden, mine's simple. I have a white bucket, compost or vegetables and goes into it, a lid goes on it, and once a week I put it in, dig it into the garden. And in the wintertime, the bucket fills, and then in the spring I dig a bigger trench and I put it in the garden. Not all of us have that option, but we need to know what level of interest the public have first, and also what they're prepared to pay. Some of these options you've identified are very costly, and I don't know if that's something I have an appetite for, or if the public have. Also, one of the caveats I think has to be, whatever we're going to be producing, offering out to the public, it has to be equitable for all residents. So including the high density apartment buildings, and including our stratas, which right now we don't provide any collection or snow plowing services for. So if we're going to do something, it needs to be available for stratas and our high densities. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're going to go around the table here in order. And I'll catch you, Norma, when we, right? Okay, Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you. Just a process question. What are we speaking to right now? There's nothing on the table. I don't know. This isn't a committee of the whole. This is a council meeting, so I don't know what I'm speaking to right now. Just curious.
Your worship Mayor Price to Councillor Graham. So the funding grant application is due on February 12th. So there was not a committee of the whole meeting that we were able to provide this to. So we're providing this.
No, I'm fully
in the
aware of that, but I don't
funding.
have there's no motion on the table.
No.
There's nothing on the table for me to speak to.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, this is a process thing. So I'm just wondering how I can speak, because I do have stuff I want to say, but there isn't a mechanism right now for us to speak because there's no motion on the table, because this is not a committee of the whole meeting.
Well, sure. I think in a sense she's providing an update, and if you know, if you want to comment on the subject, feel free.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
CO Furcho, you got a comment?
Yeah, I guess back just to that comment, we certainly don't have a motion on the floor, but if council just wanted to discuss and give that, we could then come back if there's something formal, but otherwise, today was just an update.
Just looking for direction. Yep.
So I think the Lomi idea that Kelowna is doing is the best fit. It's user pay, people want it. You subscribe to the service. I see they've expanded to Osoyoos, also to Penticton. So it's definitely not just a big city thing. That way, there's zero cost to us. I think that's the best way to look at it. And especially when we're looking at a system right now that is very expensive and doesn't save us a dime. It all goes out to the central landfill. So there's no cost savings. The landfill is a 200-year landfill, so it's not about the landfill being overfilled. And yeah, it is an expensive service to offer, and now it's a third bin. So you have a black bin, a blue bin, and a red bin. I'm guessing red. I'm just making that color up, but I'm just going off of the color of Mike Matika's shirt. So I think that would be the bin colors. But and then as Councillor Popoff mentioned, is those that live in stratas or apartments don't necessarily have this, where it really might be beneficial in those services to offer that. So I think looking at a full third party offering is a great way to start. No different than the Bird scooters. It was you invite a company in to say hey, or just see if there's an interest there to do a pilot in Cranbrook and then build it out from there.
Thank you. Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much for this additional report. This is the second time and now with additional information. So I think a big positive is that we've all increased our knowledge level, and it's an opportunity for the community to become more aware as well. So just in and of itself, I think that is very positive. I have a question that's related, but a bit of a tangent. So when we're talking about curbside collection, part of the discussion was being able to move to bi-weekly garbage pickup. So our family is just one family, 4 people out of 20,000, 2 adults, 2 teenagers. We're active recyclers, so our recycling bin is very full when it comes to get picked up. But we could move to bi-weekly garbage pickup now. And we do, we haven't been the best composters up till now, but we're getting a bit better. But even regardless of composting, right now, our one family could move to bi-weekly garbage pickup. So I'm just wondering if we can de-link the composting issue from the bi-weekly garbage pickup and look at bi-weekly garbage pickup as a separate issue. And for another day, not to solve that problem today, but I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Councillor Ray, through the mayor. Yeah, when we implemented the curbside, automated curbside garbage collection, that was also a decrease in the volume of garbage we are collecting from residents. So we went from 300 liters maximum to 240 liters. So we have heard from some residents who have larger households that they are still struggling with the decrease in the garbage volume because they've got 5 or 6 people in their homes. But we did have a lot of residents, like over 500 households, that chose for a 120 liter bin. So it kind of varies depending on how many people are in the household and different practices and things like that.
Thank you very much. And our family has a large bin, so just for context. But yeah, I think if we could start thinking about that, I just don't want us to get kind of stuck in a rut of thinking we can only think about biweekly garbage pickup if we have organic stuff going on. I think, yeah, maybe there's some opportunities there. I gather there's been some concerns shared from other communities, like from Kimberley, talking about the organic materials getting stuck in the bins. And so just wanting to make sure we soak up the lessons learned from other communities. I think we have a good opportunity to do that. There's been concerns raised, and of course, I am not a climate change expert by any means, about talking about, okay, if you're driving a diesel vehicle around to pick up your organics, how does that balance out in terms of trying to, right, make a positive difference with climate change? So, are electric vehicles an option? this is just this is a bit of a, feels like a bit more of a committee of the whole type discussion, but based on the information we have right now, at this point, I'd be leaning towards maybe we dip our toe in the water with something like a household option, like the Lomi, or maybe we could do a hybrid model with some household recycling stuff and also a rebate program. I think we could maybe start to dip our toe into this without right away going into let's buy the truck. But yeah, I would just like to make sure we definitely learn from the lessons from other communities.
Thank you. Councillor Bissett.
Well, thank you. One of the sticking points with me is this truck. And I'm wondering why the province is not subsidizing that. So is that because they don't think it's necessary to have a separate truck, that we couldn't use a garbage truck as it is, just when we're collecting organics, that's for organics? Is that, I mean, I don't know this business, but I'm wondering why the government isn't subsidizing a truck, and is it because they think it's not necessary?
Councillor Blissett, through the mayor.
Speak for the government.
Unfortunately, I'm not able to answer that. I just have the eligibility requirements in the
Okay.
list on the grant. So
So did everybody else have to buy it? Did Kimberly buy a new truck for this? Did Fernie?
they have a third-party contractor who is providing the
Okay.
service.
So that's what I was also wondering about, is the possibility of a third-party contractor doing this, and if we could compare the costs on that. So that we don't, the truck is the sticking point with me. I mean, I understand the concerns about 3 bins too, but a $500,000 truck and adding to our debt load, that concerns me. So I think if we decide that we're going to pursue curbside organics, then I think we should also look at the possibility of a third party providing it. As well, did we, and maybe CAO Furcho can answer this, in the survey that we did with the public last summer, was there a question about curbside organics? Whether there was an interest in it?
Councillor Bissett, through the mayor, no, there was not.
Oh, okay. For some reason, I thought there was. And then biweekly garbage pickup. A number of people have spoken to me about this. I mean, we have 2 people in our house. We put out the garbage once a month at the most. And so I do think biweekly garbage is reasonable. And that is something we should be looking at, particularly when we're looking at trying to decrease costs. So that's something to think about. Okay. And I guess we need feedback from Kimberly, because they were the pilot project on this. And so I think we should get feedback from them on how it has worked for them so far.
Thank you. Councillor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I guess I have a couple comments as well. And I guess one thing that Councillor Blissett touched on there was, can we just use our garbage truck to pick up, like if we are going to every second week for garbage, can we just use one of the garbage truck to pick up organics?
So Councillor Peabody, through Mayor Price, we are required to have so many trucks because we only have so much capacity. So currently we have 2 trucks running all day for garbage collection, and we have 1 spare. So if we were to provide a weekly organics during those summer seasons, we need 2 trucks to provide that service. If we only provided bi-weekly, we only need 1. You do always want a spare because if something was to break down, you can't provide collection. So ideally, to provide organics bi-weekly through the winter, weekly through the summer, and then a bi-weekly garbage program, you do need 3 vehicles plus a spare in order to meet that minimum level. You know, the organics truck during the winter months, that second truck would only be used half the time. So what we would do is we would use those trucks and cycle them through. So we would be increasing the lifespan of the trucks from, you know, 7 years to 9 years. So in the long term, we would see an increased life of our trucks because we have 4 and we're using, you know, 3.5 trucks, or sorry, 2.5 trucks throughout the whole year.
Okay, so sorry, just to clarify, if we did go with the curbside pickup, would garbage only be bi-weekly in the winter months, or would garbage be bi-weekly in the summer months as well?
Councillor Peabody through the Mayor Price. Garbage would be bi-weekly all year long. When you are considering bi-weekly garbage all the time, even without organics, you do want to be mindful of organic components in the garbage. So there could be times, you know, in those 30-degree weather that we are experiencing smells and maybe rodent concerns.
Yep.
But yeah, if you did go bi-weekly garbage, it would be through the whole year.
Okay, yes, so I guess that's where my confusion is. If we're going bi-weekly garbage all year, then why do we still need you know, a 4th truck for organics? Because to me, that seems to free up almost a week's worth of garbage collection.
Yeah, so we wouldn't have a spare truck if we only had 3 trucks through the summer months. We would just be hoping one of them didn't break down.
Okay. Yeah, like my experience with this is just Calgary's model. And the city of Calgary has 3 bins. Everyone has their, you know, their organic bin and their little, you know, organic collector on their counter or underneath their sink. And it seems to work really well. And to me, it seems the benefit of this is it might take our landfill, which has a 200-year lifespan, it might turn it into a 300-year lifespan. So it just helps out the community down the road. One thing that they do, and if we do implement this system, is they do bin checks. And if you have organics in your black bin, or if you have recycling material in the wrong bin, then they'll get a notice. And I think if it becomes a recurring problem of, you know, having organics not in the organic bin, the household might even get a fine up to $250. So I think if we implement this, we should also implement maybe bylaws to make sure that we're putting the right materials in the right bins. I guess too, like if we do have a neighboring community like Kimberley that is also looking at organics, and if we don't go with a 3rd-party model like Councillor Blissett suggested, could we would it be worth sharing a truck with a neighboring municipality? If it's only being used half-time, or would that organics truck be used full-time?
Councillor Peabody through Mayor Price. Yeah, that would have to be a discussion between the communities. I think Kimberley only does collection 3 or 4 days a week. So yeah, you'd have to look at numbers, and you would also have to get into the logistics of just repair and maintenance and who's operating those vehicles with the different collective agreements in place.
Okay. And then one last question for Mr. Furcho. This kind of ties in with what Councillor Popoff was saying about sort of testing the waters for the community. No, we're just over 1.5 years away from our next municipal election. Could this be almost like a referendum question that goes on the ballot, whether or not we do want to go with organic pickup?
There's a, so Councillor Price or Mayor Price through to Councillor Peabody. There's a number of things that could go on there, but I think something this low level, we certainly could do like we did with the budget survey is a, you know, like a survey and to get options. If council chose to do something like curbside collection and was concerned about the costs and impact on residents, and you felt it was necessary to put it on the ballot, we could do that. But I'm not sure if that step will be necessary. So I guess my advice would just be to, if we can walk through some of the options first with some discussion, broader discussion, and perhaps a lower level survey of the community to look more broadly. And if we chose to go on that, the very expensive option, and that had some community concern, we could move it to that. Yes. Yeah. So 2 steps. Try the
Okay.
lighter stuff first.
Thank you. Yeah, and I guess, yeah, and if it is possible, the next time this does come back to council, if there is, no, just some sort of rough guesstimate, how much this would expand the lifespan of the landfill, that'd be great. Might be an impossible number to come up with, but if there's, yeah, rough guesstimate would be awesome.
Councillor Stetzky.
Thank you, Mayor. Since we're just kind of expanding knowledge in this discussion, first of all, I do think it's important that council lead on some initiatives, and we definitely should be moving into organics management in the city in a more formal way. In terms of which model, I'm open for further discussion, but I think we should be committed to some form of model. My son lives in Lethbridge. They have the 3-bin system. It works very well. Everybody's got 3 bins sitting in their driveway. About 10 years ago, the regional district of East Kootenay offered barrels for composting. I have it was 50 gallon or whatever that converts to liter barrel sitting in my yard, and I've had it there for at least 10 years. And I don't know whether the regional district, I think they charged $50 a barrel, I think, at the time. So do we know whether RDEK still has those barrels available?
Councillor Stetsky through Mayor Price. The last time I looked, it was on their webpage, but I would have to confirm with them.
Okay, just because if we chose that model, we might not need to be the ones coming up with the barrels if regional district already has them there. Personally, I guess I have that barrel, which I don't manage very well. And I use the community garden composting on a regular basis, and that's worked well. So the question is, how convenient do we want to make it for people in Cranbrook? But there certainly need to be opportunities for doing a better job with organics in the city in the end, from my perspective.
Thank you. Before we go around again, I'd just like to make a couple comments here. I just want to remind council, I used to have to remind my deputies every now and then, don't go operational on me. We're getting a little operational here, so we are going operational here, and we got to be careful. I really think what we're here to do is not so much concerned about the operational details, but we're here to look at, this is budget. We're here to look at costs and service types and down the road decisions based on that. And that's staff's job to bring back the options of the different services. Are we going to do a city-based service, or are we going to do a contractor or whatever? Good comment by whoever it was earlier. What do the citizens want? I believe Councillor Popoff. We did a citizen survey recently to deal with budget, so I'm on topic. That I saw very little in there on composting. It wasn't even on the radar. I sure saw a lot that said, how about bi-weekly garbage and recycling, off weeks, and make it more efficient. And we take over the recycling because we know we can save money on recycling when that contract's up. So that's a city saving. I guess where I'm at, pertaining to budget, is we can sit here and discuss this all day, but personally, I don't believe we're in a position where unless we come up with a cost-free or negative cost solution of some kind, that we're in a position to make that decision this year and next year, looking at the next 2 years of budget. We're in for $800,000 in capital, and then we've got ongoing operational expenses. We're trying to dig down 0.25% right now. I mean, over the next 2 years. We're not in a position to take on new programs, and we've talked about it time and again, that sooner or later, as a group, we have to make those hard decisions. When we sent the survey out, the options were literally, do we want to shut down arenas? Do we want to do this, or do we want to? These were some hard questions that we asked the public. Guess what? They don't want the current services affected. Okay, so we know that's going to cost 8.5%. Well, guess what? Some of the services are going to be affected this year. Maybe they're not going to be totally withdrawn, but hours of service may change. So we're going to see impacts on services. That's going to be tough. And now we're talking about bringing one more on. Staff's talked about the work plans. Their work plans are in place pretty much right now for next year. We saw what happened last year. We overwhelmed our staff last year. They had the work plans they brought to us, and and this is new. So this is going to impact their work plans, and this is going to impact staff workloads. I don't, seriously, from what I see day to day in the office here, and I see a little bit different picture, maybe than council does because I'm around more, I can guarantee you, I don't know one staff member can take anything else on for the next year or two. I really don't see it. So I don't think we can take new projects on. Again, I look at some no-cost system, or you know what, if people want it, get a third party. So, and I'll just caution Charlotte, time-wise, how are we doing here? We're on number 3 and we got 10 items. I'm just remind about time.
Mayor Price, I think we are doing fine. The next few after this item on the road program, things should move along fairly quickly.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm thinking third party user pay, something like that, until we can review that when we're in a position to review it. We're not in a position to take that on right now, I don't believe. Anyways, we've got Councillor Rain and Councillor Popoff. Quickly.
Just quickly, Caitlin, was there some feedback as part of the official community plan regarding composting from community members?
Councillor Ray through Mayor Price, there was some comments based on like the climate action portions that they would support exploring composting. How we explore it, unknown, but there was a few comments.
Good, thank you. Just to get a sense that, yeah, we do have a little bit of feedback from community members with some interest, but like you say, not defined. And then, as you've said in your presentation, this funding is available for the 2025-2026 year to be awarded in spring 2025, but it's again available for 26-27 to be awarded in spring 26. So if we are not in a position to look at curbside for this budget year, it looks like there's another opportunity for the second intake. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. It could be discussed this time next year.
Councillor Popoff.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This grant money, is doing some survey work part of the eligibility of the grant money? So I'm thinking we didn't have that as part of our statistical survey that went out to the public, and we need to hear from the public. So is this grant money in any way can be used for survey?
Councillor Popoff through Mayor Price, the grant funding is only for those projects, so organics infrastructure construction or curbside collection program rollouts, not for surveys with public, but we could look at our local government climate action program funding. We do have-
There was an education component to those, right? So could we not like education to start with before we go there?
Unfortunately, I don't think that's able to happen, but we do have $10,000 allocated for our climate action plan for the 2025 budget year, so we could look at that funding to do something like
So I
that.
think maybe that's where Mayor Price was coming, and we don't know what we don't know, right? And if we could do something while we're waiting on planning for future budgets to find out really what the public want and what they're prepared to pay for, and if we can use that 10K through a third party so we don't have to overwhelm our staff, let's find out from what the public want.
Thank you. Anything further before we move on? Nope. Thank you. And thank you very much, Kate. Great update, great information. I think it's all there. I could make a decision. We're not in a position to do that today. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Caitlin. So next up on our agenda is Curtis Mummery, who is going to walk council through some 2025 Capital Works Program project options. And Mike.
Thanks, Charlotte. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So the report here today is to bring forward a couple options of how we can look at rolling out the 2025 Capital Works Program, as well as also asking to access some funds from the DCCs. Council received some information in committee a whole last week from Curtis Penson on the state of the Victoria Ave sewer trunk. One of the projects proposed in here is looking at addressing that. A little bit of a good breakdown for our Capital Works Program. So our Capital Works Program is funded from four main funding sources that you've seen throughout the budget process. So the capital roads funding, which is funded from the 1% dedicated road tax, that funding goes towards things such as paving, curbs, gutter, sidewalks, streetlights, signalized intersections, signage, those types of things. The water fund pays for the water-related infrastructure, so water mains, services, hydrants, and valves, that related works. Sanitary sewer pays for the sewer mains, manholes, sewer services, and then storm for the storm infrastructure. So the project options before you make use of a combination of all four of those funds to try and get as much work done on our priority one infrastructure. So priority one is our most pressing need. So as you saw from the committee of the whole, this Victoria sewer trunk, that's a really high pressing need. We're seeing a lot of water main breaks happening throughout our community. So still continuing on tackling these side street water main projects is a high priority. Good examples, the project in here from proposed 6th Street South, the phase 2, that's a continuation of the work we did last year. The phase 1, we actually discovered that 75% of the water services were actively leaking, but not enough that they were actually coming to the surface. So the rest of that project is in a very similar state. So trying to get ahead of some of these projects and get them done before they're being dug up by the crews and creating those operational concerns that we're continually seeing. And then the DCC portion of this is to augment the upsizing of the Victoria sewer trunk. So that is that development growth related portion. So I'll turn it over now to Mayor and Council.
So a request for decision here that council approve option for this project. Councillor Stetsky?
You want some discussion now, or you want a motion first?
Pardon me?
You want a motion first, or?
Yes, for option
discussion?
1 or 2.
Option 2.
We got option 1 and option 2. That's why I thought you had your hand up to
Well-
make that motion. I was over here first.
No, I had a question that might help resolve whether we go with 1 or 2, which is, if you don't mind me asking. So just quickly, why is the 6th Street reconstruction more important than the McPhee Road? You've got transpiration improvements, which is an interesting choice of words. So why would you put 6th Street ahead of McPhee Road in terms of decisions?
So Councillor Stetsky through the mayor. In both of these situations, they're all priority projects. McPhee Road is a priority one paving project. 6th Street North is 6th Street South is a priority one road, as well as a priority one water main infrastructure project. So in both of these options, there's variations of how we can deliver. So in option 1, we're looking at proposing doing more resurfacing on Victoria, versus option 2 would be trench patching over the sanitary sewer work, and then putting the paving money to other priority 1 paving projects such as McPhee, the active transportation project if we're successful with that grant, and any others that pop up throughout the spring thaw season. So it's more where we want to focus. They're both priority 1. It's a toss up. Yeah, and the leaks on 6th Street and that potential is one of the reasons why that one is considered still priority, because it's a priority 1 from both a road and a water perspective.
So, and thank you for pointing that out. I guess the key is option 1 has replacement and resurfacing of Victoria Avenue. Option 2 has trench patching rather than resurfacing in general.
That is correct.
Okay.
So Councillor Stetsky, you had your hand up first. You want to make a 1 or 2? You want to suggest option 1 or 2?
Out
We're
of
going to
the
debate
two,
them anyways.
out of 2, I would go with option 1.
Option 1? Okay, seconder for option 1, Councillor Graham. Discussion, are we going to go around the table on this, guys? Let's start on this and then go around the table. I'm pretty sure we will.
It's okay, I've had
Yeah.
my say, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Peabody?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I think in my mind, Victoria Road is like an option, like a priority 1A compared to a lot of the other streets in town. I'm just really curious that, you know, we're covering what, 4 blocks, and I think the price in here is what, $2 million. But I feel like previously when we talked about repairing Victoria, and this is the whole street, we're upwards of like $36 million. So are we only, with this service upgrade and repaving that we're talking about for those 4 blocks, is that less of a repair than what we were previously looking at as council?
Through the mayor to Councillor Peabody. So yes, this is a significant reduction in what was originally proposed when we talked to council a few years ago about the rebuild of Victoria. That full rebuild included all the water mains, the sewer mains, the storm mains, curb gutter, sidewalk, active transportation, street lights, signalized intersections, all of it. So what's being proposed here is the sewer trunk main and then putting a very thin mill and fill overlay over top of the whole width of Victoria to smooth up the road. That is a 10 to 15 year fix. It's not the full rebuild that was talked about. So there is still going to be a risk of potential some water main breaks happening where we might have to dig it up, but it will have that 10 to 15 year life.
Okay, perfect. So there's a little bit of a gamble with the repair that we're doing, that we may be tearing up a brand new road within, let's say, 3, 4, or 5 years, depending on what sort of water main breaks happen in there. So I guess my question then, because in option 1, we talk about not approving the 1% dedicated road tax. If we kept the dedicated road tax, I guess this is a 2-part question. 1, could we do more of Victoria than what you have budgeted here? And then 2, are we better off doing the full repair and maybe doing less of Victoria?
Through the mayor to Councillor Peabody again. So if we keep the 1% tax in, it won't necessarily increase the scope of work we can do on Victoria this year because we're limited to the amount of sewer main that we can replace. That's the limiting factor of the distance we can go when it comes to the work on Victoria. In looking at the complete repair there, the water main hasn't seen significant failures. It does meet the current capacity based on some of the more recent modeling. So there is a risk that it could leak. And we would look at potentially if there's concerns if the services have a list, we'd listen to them and potentially address services when we're doing the work. But there's not a huge concern of doing it at this time.
Okay, thank you.
The other point to
sorry,
note
go
with the
ahead.
1% tax
Yeah.
is if we go with option 1 and in future discussions, council does decide to keep that tax, if we do get the ATP grant and we were successful, there's most likely the probability that we'd still be able to do that work if the 1% dedicated tax was kept in place this year.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bissett? Nothing?
Yeah, I don't have a question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Ray?
Thank you, Mayor. So just for clarification, the start item about assuming that the council defers the 1% road tax, does that only apply to option 1 or does that also apply to option 2?
To Councillor Ray through the mayor, it would reduce the amount of work in option 2 as well.
So as it's presented, it's only in option 1 you're assuming that the road tax is deferred, and in option 2 you're assuming that the road tax is approved?
It's assuming they're deferred in both.
Oh, very good.
It's just in option 1, if it is, the road tax is deferred, it is almost certain that we won't be able to do the work from the active transportation grant if we were successful.
Gotcha. Okay. So yeah, that's, I think, an important clarification, just that in both, we're assuming the road tax is deferred. And I understand that that's an assumption to work with. I'm not assuming that that's a given. That decision is yet to be made. Like it's, I think, erring on the side of caution to include that, but right? That decision has not been made. So to my mind, yeah, these motions sort of could have been worded in the inverse as well, looking at the various scenarios of whether or not we have that 1% road tax. Regarding the McPhee Road Active Transportation Project, hey, I fully understand the importance of Victoria. We would all enjoy a smoother road surface. I totally get that. At the same time, we do, I believe, have a council motion that's been approved to move forward with that McPhee Road Active Transportation Program. Like council has approved a motion regarding that. So I'm concerned about contravening a motion that this table has already approved.
Did we agree the project or did we agree to? I know we agreed to study it. Did we agree to that the project occurring? Oh, I would assume we had waited till budget time before we did that.
I thought we approved it
Was it-
contingent upon receiving the grant.
If you guys continue the conversation, we'll be looking it up and we'll get you the exact words
Okay.
of that.
Yeah,
Perfect.
I just
Perfect.
want us to be like
Yeah.
aware of what
Great point.
we've already decided. But anyways, yeah, I mean, I certainly support the work on this, and I really appreciated the committee of the whole and the discussion about the sewer capacity. I mean, as you say, that's the key limiting factor in terms of this Victoria work. So yeah, that committee of the whole is a really good resource. And if there's anyone in the community who wants to just get a bit of refresher on those details, I'm sure that that video is available. So yeah, we have limited resources, and these are all high priority projects. For myself, like I say, I look forward to the discussion about the 1% road tax. And I recall, I think it may have been from last year's budget discussions, and Mike maybe can refresh me on this. Even with the 1% road tax continuing, if it's approved every year, my recollection is that we're still behind, that we still are in an infrastructure deficit, which really stuck out for me. So I don't know if you want to just give me a refresher on that.
Through the mayor to council, Ray. So even with continuing it, yes, we are definitely still in a deficit. Based on running the numbers last year and still looking at it into this year, to be keeping up with where we'd be maintaining our current level of service, we'd need to be closer in the $5.5 million, and we're in the 3.4 right now without the 1% this year. So we're definitely still behind.
Thank you. And I'm sure another day we will have the specific discussion about the 1% road tax. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, see you, Rachel.
All right, so thanks to Bradley and Marnie here for finding the minutes. So council on the 9th of September, the motion or the resolution, I should say, from council is 261-24. That council received the report from Engineering and Development Services Department titled Active Transportation Grant Application, and further that council direct staff to apply to the BC Active Transportation Infrastructure Grant Program for 2024-2025 for the McPhee Road Multi-Use Path Project from Rails to Trails to Wildstone Drive at an estimated cost of $830,000, carried unanimously. The second motion following that, 262-24, that council directs staff to include this project in the 2025 Capital Roads Program pending approval of the grant and fund the city's 40% share of the estimated project costs using the Capital Roads Program grant funds.
Good
Carried
catch,
unanimously.
Councillor Ray. Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think it's important that we get Victoria paved and that's why I liked option one. I was thinking about that even with what we were looking at with McPhee and the Active Transportation Network. Victoria gets about 8 times the traffic that McPhee does, and that it is a priority one star AA. So I have no problem with option one. And if it delays McPhee, it delays McPhee. We can throw some paint on the road and patch a few potholes that we heard about last night at a meeting. But I think Victoria is beyond that. The road's completely blown apart, and it needs to be more than just trench patched.
Thank you, Councillor Popoff.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Similar to Councillor Graham, Victoria's priority number one. And we already have it on the books for McPhee Road, subject to grant funding, and then there's a small portion that we would pay. So I think everything seems pretty straightforward. And option one, with already having this one on the books for McPhee, and then we get Victoria Avenue properly, sewer line properly replaced and proper resurfacing.
Thank you. Councillor Ray, did you have an additional comment?
Thank you. Just a point of clarification. So I just want to ensure that the motion that's on the table does not contravene the motion that has previously been passed by council.
Before you answer that, all right, was that contingent on the grant funding? Okay. Have we got that funding? No. So it wouldn't be,
Yeah, just if we get the grant funding though, we have council approval to move forward with it. I just want to make sure we're clear.
totally understand that. I guess to engineering, when do we anticipate we may hear on our success on that grant?
To the mayor, at this point, I have not heard of any timelines of when they're going to release the results of that funding. So at this point, it's an unknown.
So it's an unknown, really. Yeah, and you know, I mean, if we get it really after summer, it's not a project this year anyway. You know, it's going to be a 2026 project, isn't it? So, fair. Yes, from my perspective, certainly option one. Absolutely, you know, looking at, I think our priority is certainly Victoria. Just knowing some of the projects that we're anticipating this year, we have agreed that is our high density corridor for the city along Victoria. We get any more than what a couple that are maybe on the books right now, we're not going to be able to accommodate that this year. So that has to be our priority. I think considering the number of subdivision applications that our engineering has been dealing with last year and into this year, there's an awful lot just lining up on that Victoria corridor. So I think that has to be priority one. And, you know, McPhee, I totally understand the residents up there, their concerns. You know, if it doesn't happen, again, if the grant comes later in the year, it's not going to happen this year anyway. But saying that, if we can't consider it this year, let's put McPhee on our number one priority list for next year. See you, Overture.
Thank you, Mayor Price. I guess what I just wanted to comment is further to Councillor Ray's comments is two things. One is, you know, the decision on the 1% road tax is yet to be made. That's later in our budget process. So, you know, there's that. And secondly, adding something to the road program. We have a lot in the road program. It's not, you know, guaranteeing a project is completed when we add something to the road program. So there's some semantics there because we have a lot of things in the road program. And each year it's sort of goes by how much funding there is. And through the year, something might change in terms of priorities when we have a street that's having multiple blowouts of water and we're able to get it in. You know, like it's a lot of, there's some movement there. So there's two sort of things. This isn't the done deal decision stopping anything. There's two more things and some time yet, you know, and if the grant comes through, we can revisit it certainly.
Thanks, Mark. I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Graham. You know, you'd be impacted certainly by, you know, the other one, and for your consideration on prioritizing Victoria. Yes, Charlotte.
Mayor Price, there is a second resolution at the bottom.
I'm sorry. And that? So this will be a separate resolution then, right? Okay, that council allocates $341,000 from the sanitary sewer DCC reserve to the Victoria Sanitary Sewer Main Replacement Project for pipe oversizing. Mover, please, Councillor Stetsky. Councillor Ray, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. Thanks, guys. Good stuff.
Thank you. So I'm going to suggest that we break. I believe there are some sandwiches and a little bit of refreshments out front, and then maybe back in 15 minutes. Thank you. Okay. So the next item, the next section is it's the last section for today's meeting, and it's most of it is information for us to discuss and some things for council to consider. I left a loose piece of paper on your desk. It is a replacement for page 43 on your agenda. The replacement has added the elimination of the principal payment on the Moyer Reserve loan of $132,000 down under expense reductions. So this document highlights the steps that staff took prior to our meetings in December, and some of them did involve council discussions in the form of approving bylaws, pardon me, adopting bylaw amendments, etc. And so this was, so prior to us coming together in December, I'm just taking a look here to make sure that everything, that's all correct. Yeah, so prior to us getting together in December, these steps had already been taken. So Councillor Blissett during the break asked whether or not that $132,000 was considered in the discussion we had back in December, and yes, it was. So if council remembers, we started 2025 with 8.59% increase. If none of this had been done, we would have been up over 10%. So instead, when we got together in December, we were at 8.81 or something. That was the discussion we had. So this is an illustration of the more material items that went on behind the scenes, done by staff, and in some cases through consultation with council, but prior to us coming and having budget discussions with you. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those. It's really an FYI item. Okay. So if we move over to page 45.
Great.
Thank you, Mayor. CFO Osborne, so in our packages, we've got 7.5, 25, 29 5-year financial plan projects. Was there anything we want to touch on that item? I think we left off at 7.4 capital works. So, okay, very good. And the item you've just described is item 7.6.
Correct. Thank you so much, Councillor Ray. And I believe I referred to you as Councillor Blissett earlier. My apologies. So yes, page 41 is a list of projects that were, pardon me, that were deferred when we met back in December. So the intent was that those projects would be coming back in front of council at some stage through the budget process for considerations. So I'm going to go through each of them. Most of them are going to continue to sit on the sidelines for the time being, but this is a place to see them all together. So the 1% road dedicated tax. So the decision on this item is expected to be deferred to the latter stages of budget deliberations. That item was deferred back in December when we met. The Gold Creek Dam, also deferred. We are continuing to pursue grant opportunities. This item will also be returned to future council meetings. Continuing on to the next item is the automated recycling vehicle. This decision hinges on whether council elects to move forward with the in-house recycling collection service. The workplace safety and staff performance evaluation item. This was the item submitted by HR. This item will be tabled for later stage discussion. HR will bring forward a project outline for council's consideration. The final item is we do require a decision from council. This is the social development coordinator, budget $135,000. 2025 is the final year of a 3-year project. Staff are preparing for review of ongoing needs with the RDEC to determine the future of the initiative. The RDEC, the regional district, has committed to their 2025 funding portion, and today staff are seeking council's approval of the 2025 project. And that project is funded $50,000 from the city's financial stabilization reserve and $85,000 from the grant from the regional district.
Yeah.
So I'd like council approval, and then we'll just read a resolution that is similar to what we read in December.
CEO Virtual has a comment.
I just, thank you, Mayor Price. Just to remind council, like during the capital budget discussions, council requested that we go to the regional district and look for more funding for this. And so what I've been doing is working with Marcel, and we're going to go to the regional district with kind of what was done in the last 3 years, like we typically have been doing. But this time we're going to go very early and sort of forecast the rest of this year, but also talk about the future and try to, use that as the time to have that conversation with them. And so that process will take some time through this year. So rather than this sort of, I guess, what you call it, the payment to run the program this year, waiting contingent on that, we were wanting to get the approval just to run this year's funding because regional district has the money, and from council we get the money because we're a month into this year already. And just timing wise, we felt it's probably, if we stage it, that for this year, let's keep running this one as it is, and then next year we'll see if we're able to work out something with the regional district. So that was the concept, because there was that discussion at the council table during capital.
Thank you.
Thank you, CAO Furcho. So while we are in 2025, we're still going to consider this pre-approval as the budget hasn't been adopted. So that council give a budget pre-approval for the social development coordinator. Yeah.
Councilor Ray. Second is Councilor Setsky. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So we'll just skip past page 43. Thank you for keeping me on track there, Councillor Ray. So page 45 is at the very top. This is the information that council saw in December. And when we left, when we stepped away in December, we were sitting at 8.87%. Since then, there have been a few additional changes made, totaling $516,000, and we are now sitting at 7.43%. There are a additional, I think I should just highlight, pardon me, I think I should just highlight that we did adjust our non-market change upward to 325,000, up from 175. The preliminary roll in December, in 2024 rather, end of November, suggested that the non-market change would be $175,000 in 2025. The adjusted roll that came out at the end of December had a very significant new number for the business class, and that's what increased the non-market change to the 325 that we're now running with in the budget. So that represented an increase of $150,000 to the non-market change. So items that we are working on is the bottom half of this schedule. It's in summary here, and we can see Trevor is lining up to talk to council about those initiatives that pertain to recreation and culture. There is also a written summary behind the schedule, but always best to be face to face. Thank you, Trevor. While Trevor gets himself up and running, I will entertain you with, with nothing. Here goes Trevor.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. So today, as you'll see in the plan there, just some updates on what our work in progress is and what we're planning for the future to help decrease costs and increase revenues. So one of the items that's a work in progress right now is ice rentals. So currently minor hockey is still traveling outside of Cranbrook for 10 hours of practice ice per week. So we are having a look at that and trying to figure out how to get that those ice hours inside Cranbrook. It works out to about $28,000 in ice rentals. And the sort of, I guess, the consequences of bringing them into Cranbrook would be our adult hockey will end up being later in the evening. So there could be an offset of some rentals that don't continue if it's too late in the day, but we do have our priority of use as youth first. The next item is the Triton Swim Club. So as you'll see in my notes there, the Tritons pay an hourly rental for their lane rentals. Bylaw allows up to 15 per lane, $12.75 per lane per hour. Works out to about 85 cents per swimmer per hour. And we know that the cost to operate the aquatic center at Western Financial Place is $718.04 an hour. If we do the calculations that there's 3 zones in the pool, there's 8 lanes in the pool, it works out to $29.92 per lane per hour, assuming the pool is full. So right now we're paying 85 cents a person or $12.75 a lane. The cost to operate that lane is $29.92. I do have a couple other stats that might help Councillor Graham with his previous questions. So assuming the pool is full with 120 people and our 3 lifeguards, it works out to about $5.98 per person per hour. Our average numbers in the pool usage right now are around 250 per day. That works out to $34.47 an hour to operate the pool. So these are the items that we're looking at, and we'll be bringing back to council with recommendations for approval when we look at our fees and charges. Fees and charge bylaw currently is valid until September. Next item on the list is aquatic passes. So we have 112 memberships. That's 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, and 12-month passes. We have 77 grade 5 memberships, which, if council isn't aware, grade 5s in the SD5 get free swimming for the school year. Punch passes currently are the hot item. Valid today, just over 1,400. 1,400 10 punch pass cards. Wow. So some questions from council in the past we have the Rec and Culture team looking at the aquatics programs and how do we maximize the usage, minimize the quiet times and, maximize the revenue of the opportunities that we have there. The aquatics itself is going through a bit of a restructure. So the cost per guard to onboard is around $1,500, and it's around $2,300 a year to keep a lifeguard employed. That's based on all their recertifications, their uniforms, all that keeping up to date. So if we take our membership, our staff, and we condense it to highly skilled, highly trained staff, instead of having a big pot we have a smaller pot that could offer better services, also is a cost savings to the city. And that's what we're looking at right now, is finding these slow times, not backfilling sick calls if we don't need to. You know, the cost savings, not necessarily endless, but they compound on each other. If we don't need to hire a staff member, that's $1,500 off the hop plus $2,300 a year to keep them employed. You know, there's a lot of operational savings to be had there.
So on the back of that page, we've also provided council with some thoughts about things we're looking at for future, more into latter part of 25, probably into 2026. So I will turn it back over to Trevor to summarize his future thoughts.
Thank you, Charlotte. So as you see, the future plans, and this is what we're working on right now, is some pilot projects within Rec and Culture. And one of these pilot projects is the Aquatics Center being closed for specific times during the week. And these times are low use times. They're not non-use times. So obviously we are changing people's schedules, changing their lifestyles. But Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we open the pool right now at 6:30 in the morning, Monday to Friday. So if we open the pool at 8 o'clock as opposed to 6:30 for 3 days a week, and on those same 3 days a week, we close the pool from noon till 4. We're looking at an operational savings of $50,000 a year. This pilot, be it only for 3 months, we're going to do this until our summer hours, which is July 2nd when they start. And so we're looking at about $17,000 savings in this period. And that'll give us a true feedback of how this affects the usage of the pool. So we're planning on surveys specifically with the morning users. The afternoon users are more schools. It's going to be a condensed format program, similar to what neighboring communities already do. And the other part of this program is we're also developing a communication strategy for our users. So to get council the ultimate data, so that when we do come back and say, hey, this worked or didn't work, or here's our thoughts, we can make a decision moving forward. The second pilot program that we're looking at is some summer ice at Western Financial Place. So Western Financial Place, we remove our ice when the Bucks hockey season is done, so May, and we put the ice back in for the beginning of August. August is actually our highest rental revenue amount. And I say that because it's not subsidized. Everybody pays rack rate. There's no minor hockey, no figure skating going on at that time. So it is a high revenue generating period. So we are going to pilot having the ice in for July this year. We have numerous groups that are requesting and promising rentals and whatnot. So, you know, if we bring in $25,000 in revenue, that's unheard of. The operational costs to continue doing this are some utilities. Instead of keeping our building at 25, 24 degrees, we're going to keep it at 18 or 19 degrees. So a little bit cooler in the summer. Our ice plant never turns off, so their usage of utilities is going to be very minimal. And the pilot program for the Kinsman Arena. So our study shows that the Kinsman Arena and the Memorial Arenas during the days, so 6 a.m. till 3:30, 3:45 p.m., Monday to Friday, the usage doesn't fill one sheet, let alone 2 sheets. And the project that we're working on right now is putting everybody into one arena and finding out if there's operational savings with staff members. So that is something that we're working on right now. Obviously, it's a delicate situation to talk about, but the proof will be in the numbers once we get to that point. And the other future part, which hopefully we come to council very soon with, is our fees and charges. So I mentioned fees and charges bylaw currently runs until the end of August. September 1 is the new year. In speaking with groups like minor hockey, their registration starts on May 1st. So they would like to have their fall pricing like accurate before May 1st. And that makes more sense to everybody. So having the fees and charges for next year set early enough that all the programming that is affected by it can make any adjustments, and we can hear that, have the true data to move forward with.
So I think what we should do is turn it over to council for questions for Trevor.
Sorry, I missed that.
We'll just turn the floor over to council to ask questions
Certainly,
of
yeah.
Trevor.
Councillor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, Trevor, I think these are all great recommendations. So I really appreciate you bringing these forward. The only thing I'm like, I might worry about, and that's with reducing the hours of the pool. And maybe you've thought about this, and this doesn't need to be a concern whatsoever. But if we start reducing the hours that the lifeguards work, is there the risk of that we might lose lifeguards because they're just not getting enough hours?
Mayor Price, through to Councillor Peabody. That is an excellent question. That is something that we have looked at. One of the transitions that we've made in the last year is our lifeguards now have dedicated schedules, dedicated, we call them lines. So they know their schedule 3 months in advance, as opposed to previously it was, every 2 weeks, every month you got a schedule, and there was a lot of chaos. It actually was a full-time job to schedule lifeguards. Now that we've gone to lines, so like most of our full-time positions, even though these aren't full-time positions, you know what your schedule is for the year. These lifeguards know what their schedules are for the year. So they, seniority-wise, bid into lines. So I don't believe that we would have that issue as big of a problem now as we would say a year ago, when it was you didn't know what you were working in 2 weeks type thing. So that is something that we've tried to mitigate and condense down to a core group. If I may, just additionally, one of the other processes that we're doing is increasing revenues, is we're increasing class sizes for lessons. So we currently have a lesson size that is under what's allowed by the National Life Saving Society, but it is comfortable with our less experienced instructors. So the more experienced the more experienced our instructors are, the more students they can have in their class, which we pare down to this a condensed group that is more highly trained, more highly skilled. Instead of having, and I don't know the numbers exactly, instead of having 8, they might have 12 in their class, which is allowable, but we couldn't provide the service currently with the current staff that we had, be it that we had so many staff that only did a little bit of training here and there, a little bit of instructing here and there, as opposed to doing it every week, 3 days a week.
Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, 2 questions. What does evaluating need for deck resources mean? It's a $20,000 figure attached to that. And how many users do you have generally between 6:30 and 8 to come in to swim currently?
Mayor Price, through to Councillor Stetsky. So evaluating the need of lifeguards on deck. So that is during our morning time. So 6 to 8:30, 6:30 to 8. We open our pool with 3 lifeguards. So Cranbrook is said to have 3 zones. The zones are considered the pool. So we have the wave pool, the lap pool, and the hot zone, which is the sauna, steam room, hot tub, that area. So we have 3 zones. We have 3 lifeguards to cover them. So if we are opening the pool in the morning and our main users, so for instance, we go to our numbers, our average usage at 6 a.m. right now is 13.47 people from that 6 to 7 slot. That's who checks in. They either scan or pay or whatever. So we have 13.5 people in the pool, which is by law required to have one guard for 40 people. But those people might use the lap pool, the wave pool, and the hot tub. So if we end up closing the wave pool and say, you can use the lap pool or the hot zone, that only requires us to have 2 guards instead of 3.
Councillor Ray and Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Mayor. A quick question and comment. I should know this, but what time is Aquafit in the morning? I know those folks are very dedicated, so I'm just curious what time that is.
Mayor Price through to Councillor Ray. Very good question. Guess what? We have 2 start times in the morning and 1 start time in the evening. Our start times in the morning are 8 and 7:30. Our 7:30 times are on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And our Monday, Wednesday, Fridays are 8 o'clock. So there may be some schedule adjustments that we do need to make, but our plan is to communicate as far enough in advance. And these times aren't 100% set in stone, but this is what we want to get that message out, show what our schedule is going to look like. And, if it appeases the masses, great. You're going to have 1 or 2 that don't like it. We already know that.
Very good. Thank you. You're already on top of the Aquafit folks, so that's good. They will appreciate that. And I just wanted to say I really appreciate staff's fresh eyes on this. The pencil's totally sharp, looking at innovative strategies, trying pilots, and having that focus, as you said, on gathering data and making evidence-based decisions. So that is excellent, and that's going to serve us well moving forward because this is our new normal.
Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you. Would, I know we do it all the time, but would the ice being in July affect any operations of a concert or anything? Like, I know I know that we cover it, but like, does that add extra cost if there is, or you just wouldn't book shows in July just because the ice is in?
Mayor Price through to Councillor Graham. Good question. We do have College of the Rockies grad, we have Mount Baker's grad, and we do have Spirit of the Rockies that all happen in June, which would be this period of time where we would be putting the ice in. So that it comes down to operationally, where do we put the ice in? How do we put the ice in? And then the extra cost of covering the ice. I think a bylaw fee on that's around $1,800 to cover the ice. And that would be something that we would take on a case by case. Right now, our conversions in the summertime, specifically those 3 events, are shared between the 3 events. So this pilot project, if it comes to fruition, it might become a situation where the ice never comes out. So that it's just an operational idea where, every 2 years we take the ice out for 2 weeks, kind of like we do with the pool, close it for 2 weeks to do maintenance. This is going to save a lot of costs to the city. It's going to save a lot of costs to the Bucks hockey organization with their logos and whatnot. So I think it's just something that we take the bigger picture of. But yeah, there will be some additional costs in that way. And I think we just work with those particular groups. If it's a concert, it's a line item. If it's a community group, then, we can look at it that way as well.
Good point. Councillor Papa.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So just briefly, yeah, I love that you're being innovative, looking at other options. And because they're pilot programs, we're going to learn from those experiences and may go back to the old ways, but at least we're trying. So thank you.
Good. Anything further? No. Thanks, Trevor. Oh, Councillor Brissette.
Thank you. I was just wondering if other communities with arenas leave their ice in all year. If you know that, Trevor.
Mayor Price through to Councillor Brissette. Yeah, sorry, some communities do. I know Canal Flats does. That's currently the complaint that I get from all the local skaters is they have to go to Canal Flats. I know in Kelowna, having been a resident there in the past, that they have a few sheets that do keep their ice in. Most communities find a way of having 1 sheet throughout the year, but it is an extra cost if you don't have a facility like Western Financial Place where the compressors, the refrigeration plant never shuts off.
Yep. Back to Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you. So with the other 2 arenas empty, is there opportunity to generate rental revenue on them, like for usage? I know that one is maybe used a bit by lacrosse, but like, is it exclusively lacrosse, like no one else can use it? Like how do we have agreements with that, or are we making money on that?
Mayor Price through the Council Graham. So the Western Memorial Arena in the summertime has turf in for lacrosse. So we have an agreement with lacrosse that they can install their turf and they pay for use. They pay for every hour they use in that facility. And the city has the right to use the turf or rent out the turf at any time we feel fit. The Kinsman Arena, we use it for our play program in the summer, all summer long. We also had roller skating in there last year, and I'm not sure if the plans are to continue moving forward with that, but it was a good relationship. I think we just need to find a better marketing strategy, perhaps, to have that be successful. But we are open to using it. Our fees and charges are substantially low for a lot of the uses. So it sometimes doesn't outweigh having staff in versus a rental as well. So those are other items that we need to look at.
Yeah, I guess it's supplemental in. So the memorial would be restricted to turf only operations. Like we had that little concert thing in there. Like we couldn't use that for that because there's turf in there. So like that would be turf only. And whose turf is it? Is it ours or is it theirs? And if would it come out or does it come out?
Mayor Price, to Councillor Graham. Good question. So in our agreement with the I can't remember the name of the lacrosse association, but they do, if we need it removed, they pay to remove it and they pay to replace it. So it's 100% their cost. It's an agreement both ways. We use it for our play program. We haven't had any other users want to use it, but if it does need to come out, it is the cost of the lacrosse team.
Good. Anything further? Good. Thanks, Trevor.
Thank you, Trevor.
Great work.
Just a couple of other items in the work in progress. Yep, from the, just move on. Oh, go with it. Yep. Yeah, so from the Engineering and Development Department, a development fee review. So it's a comprehensive review of all development permit fees, such as building permits, zoning bylaw amendments, development permits, etc. These fees have not been updated in over a decade or longer. This will be brought to Council for discussion at a future committee of the whole.
And council might remember we had that Mark Kosh here. We did the workshop on development. And so it's further to that. So it's a very comprehensive review of all what we do. And that's going to be part and parcel with some of the work that's coming forward with some of the incentives for development programs that we're looking at post OCP. So all of those things are being worked on, tremendous amount of work. Just know that, you know, that's coming. And so I guess that's kind of what we're trying to do today is tell you that we're still working on a lot of things that will come and affect the tax rate. They're just not ready yet. And some of them might come after that too, but we're going to continue on those things.
Thanks, Mark. Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you. So just in this, would this include any kind of like our revitalization exemption or high density bonusing? Would that look like in this review? Would those topics be talked about?
So Mayor Price through to Councillor Graham. So two separate processes. So do you remember the development service review we did when Mark Kosh through that,
Yeah.
the consultant? So that work is all around the fees, everything from building permits to development fees and all of that. And then post OCP implementation as of Monday, now it allows us to work on things like the downtown revitalization and the high density corridor in Victoria potentially as options for reducing costs in specific areas. But the rest is a review of where we're short, where you know, all the costs are higher than what they need to be in some cases. And you know, we've talked about some other opportunities about incentivizing speedier development approvals too. So there's a bunch of stuff, and like I say, this is going to be a whole committee, the whole topic. It would do me no justice to try to explain it here.
All right, and then also from Engineering and Development, a downtown parking and lease rates review. Further to the January 2025 Committee of the Whole meeting, options will be brought forward for council to update the downtown parking and lease rates to reduce or remove the reliance on taxes to cover operational and capital costs of downtown parking. So on page 49, we have a list of other thoughts. And so these thoughts are thoughts that would require direction from council to staff, as they have not been evaluated in depth, the impacts, and then to bring back recommendations for implementation. So CAO Furcher, would you like me to just go over each item at a time?
Potentially what we could do is just ask council if they'd like to ask questions or pursue any of these items.
Yep. Councillor Ray.
We don't have page numbers.
Yep. So
Guys in the gallery there.
I believe the RCMP item was touched on the earlier memo that's in the package around council projects. I think somewhere here we've kind of already touched on that, so I don't know if we need a decision on that today. But anyways, I just wanted to make a couple quick comments. One of the items noted is fire department staff should discontinue the practice of attending medical calls. It's a duplication of BC Ambulance. I totally understand the concerns about this. I understand the cost concerns. I understand it's not in our scope to control how BC Ambulance does their job, but there's concerns there in terms of service delivery. You know, just thinking about our survey to the public, I don't think anybody was saying, please decrease our medical services through the fire department. I know it's costly, and I know the interface with BC Ambulance is not going that well right now. But in terms of service to the community, if it's your loved one who's having a heart attack on the side of the road, and you know there's firefighters who could come and save their life, but they can't come because we've discontinued the service, like that's a whole big discussion about changing service levels. I don't believe we've had that request from the public. I realize it's costly and I realize it's complicated, but just in terms of saving lives, I believe people appreciate and have come to expect that service from the fire department. So that's just my comment on that. And one other quick comment on the hanging basket program. It's a small item. I know every dollar counts, but we did hear feedback from people saying that how our community looks is very important to them. And I believe the hanging basket program is an important part of having, certainly, I think it's mostly downtown, a welcoming downtown. So although I appreciate we're trying to save every dollar, and as is noted, it's already done. We're going to have hanging baskets for 2025. I would just share that I think the community was pretty strong in their feedback that although folks do want taxes to be as low as possible, they also want our community to look nice and welcoming.
Thank you. I got some names here, but Councillor Steskey, I believe, has another appointment here. Do you have anything before I go on to the others here? Because I know you're stretched for time here.
Love the hanging baskets.
Great, thank you.
To keep them.
I got Councillor Peabody, Councillor Blissett, Councillor Graham. And
I'm also commenting on the hanging baskets. Yeah, I'm a big supporter of them, but instead of having it paid for out of our budget, can we have it paid for out of the downtown parking reserve? Because I think part of that is for downtown beautification. I wonder if this would count as a downtown beautification project. Okay, thank you.
thank you, Councillor Blissett.
Oh, thank you. The issue on the fire department is to really review that cost and to, I'm not sure if it should be yes or no on continuing on with that service. But it is a service being provided by the ambulance workers are the ones that are responsible for life saving completely. And so I just wonder, there has to be times when the fire department isn't there. Like, for example, when there was the big fire out at Acom. So I just think we should be looking at this and have a better idea of how much it is costing us and what service is actually being provided, because that's unclear to me. So I'm sure it's unclear to the public too. And it has been perceived by the public as a duplication of service. But I'm not clear on that. So I do think it is something that we should be looking at. Something else that came up the other day, you know, we've often looked at RCMP staffing levels. We haven't seen it. We're funding for 26 members. We have never seen 26. Well, I think for 1 month, we've seen 26 members. So the average seemed to be, from the data I've seen, 25, maybe at the most. So that is an area that we have to look at again if it hasn't. But I do think with regard to the fire service, we need to know what we're paying for and have a better idea of that, and then make the decision to continue as is, make adjustments, or cut it off completely. But we're not really informed, I don't believe, at this point in time.
Thank you, Councillor Bissett. I've got Councillor Graham and then Councillor Papa. Yep.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think there's a couple of things there around the medical calls with the fire service. I think it's definitely something that needs to be reviewed and looked at. There was a good amount of discussion and consultation when we implemented it, and I think it's worth having a review and a discussion on it and looking back over the last 5 years. Okay. Or even since we've implemented it, like where has it gone and where is it now? And those are important metrics for us and for the public, because I don't think people truly know the cost of that decision, nor do we. And so I think that's important to figure out. And I understand that our fire guys are there, so it's not like we're paying them to come in to go to a medical call, but there's still a cost to it. And I think it's important that we see that cost. And I think it's very important that we pass that cost on to the province. So I think that there's ways there, because this is a complete failure of BC Ambulance, IHA, and the Minister of Health. We are in this crisis and they're relying heavily on our services, which we are able to provide and able to provide for that loved one that's had that health issue. But there's a cost there, and I think we need to be able to start recovering it, because it isn't just the random broken arm or a broken leg on the ice anymore. There becomes impacts of that we see through WCB, through mental health, and through all of that, where, you know, our guys are trained to fight fires and to rescue people, and I think they're going to calls that they aren't necessarily, they didn't sign up for. So I think we have to be cognizant of that. And with that too, is like, let's look at, if this is something that if this is going to be the norm, maybe we need to be a pilot community for something. Then maybe we need to look at the Kitimat model a bit more and look at a way that we could pilot it in Cranbrook or something like that. You know, there's ways that we can just, rather than just status quo rolling on, what are ways that maybe we take on a bit more, but we get something in return. So I think that's worth looking at. And the other thing I'm wondering is, I'm still waiting for those numbers for WCB. Are those coming? I asked for them a couple of months ago with our WCB rates. How much is up because of raises? How much is up because of personal injury? How much of that is because of mental health? And how can we break that down? I haven't seen that. Is that coming?
Mayor Price through to Councillor Graham. Yeah, it is. We just had a few changes here, so that portfolio was backburnered for a little bit, but it is coming.
Councillor Papa.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Oh, I'm losing my voice. So 7-8 years ago, council at that time was petitioned by the fire department, and we did go to fund and approve a full service medical training practice, specifically so that the fire department would be the most often the first responder when grandpa's got a heart attack and you need to get him out of the building and do all the ambulatory medical training while waiting for the ambulance to get there. And we did that, and I think that's critically important. Of course, times have now changed post COVID, and there's other things that are, I think, causing a lot of the alarm and costs. But I don't think legally we can go back and say, don't do that anymore unless we actually retract that level of service and training. I don't know if we can do that. So maybe it's a legal matter that we have to take a look at. What I would like to see, though, if we can, is once the ambulance gets there, we're done. And there's no fire issues to deal with. I mean, we hand that off, and it's back to the fireman or the ambulance service to deal with. And then secondly, with our hanging baskets, the Cranbrook Gardening Club. Why don't we do some sort of a partnership relationship with the Cranbrook Gardening Club and see if they want to take on some of not just our hanging plants, but I showed our CAO and our mayor other communities what they do for beautification in and around the neighborhoods, and in particular downtown. Maybe that'd be something the gardening club would want to take on in some sort of relationship with the city.
Thank you. Before I go back to Councilor Peabody, just a couple of things I had. I talked earlier today with Charlotte. We were talking about the RCMP. There's 20% on other area calls. We're also paying $2,500 a day, $2,500 a shift for an officer to be brought into Cranbrook from another area. $2,500 a shift. And typically they're not coming in for one shift. They may be coming in for a set of 4, right? So let's do some serious math here. It's not our fault. We have a staff, and Councillor Graham brings this up all the time. We have a contractual agreement with the RCMP. The contractual agreement says we will have 26 officers. I really question why we even have to pay any overtime when you think about it. I can see if they need additional resources for a big event. I don't know why we'd be paying overtime for anything beyond the 26 if they don't have 26, even to fill shifts. If they're down to 23 or whatever, that's their problem. They're not honoring the contract. This is a contract. Okay? So, you know, we go back to them on this 20% thing. It's bigger than the 20%. We got, you know, I mean, we've heard Staff Sergeant Graham said, well, 62% staffing has been pretty normal. Well, you know what? That's all. Look at the overtime on that, you know? And let's be honest, we don't even have a legitimate staffing to handle the concerns in Cranbrook on a lot of days when they're not bringing people on overtime because they're short-staffed. So for a community our size, let's be honest, our complement is insufficient. That's part of their problem for their contract. So now they want to charge overtime because they can't. No, they should be eating that overtime. And one thing yeah, we can try that and we know what they're going to say. But seriously, a contract's a contract. And I don't know, I guess we'd have to read it and see what it says about overtime. And, you know, I can see overtime when they're right, when there's touch on an incident or whatever, but not like this. And the 2,500, why are we paying for the accommodation, the airfares and everything else? That's not our problem. We want 20 extra number of people on shift here. That's what we expect. How they get them here, I think is their issue. So I think we really got to go back to Ottawa or wherever it is, you know, and put this on the line and say, this is pretty dysfunctional. And then my second issue here is just the conversation on the fire service and the police service, ambulance service. Really, it's so dysfunctional. And, you know, and it's been dysfunctional for how many years? And it's status quo. How long is status quo acceptable? I mean, we really got to look, and you have to say, you know, the status quo models, you know, they're not working for local government's best financial interest. In fact, it's killing us. We're the only ones that are that are suffering, local government, because these provincial organizations or the federal organizations can't live up to their responsibilities. Local government across Canada are eating these. And you know what? I think we have to look at that, and we have to, and you know, I just don't want to send a complaint and send us some money. Let's look at some solutions and maybe offer, and whoever said pilot project, we got to start looking at pilot projects going forward, because that's the only way you're going to get organizations like this even considering a move. We've talked to the province enough on other issues we have. As soon as we mention the word pilot project, their ears perk up. What do you got? Bring something to us and we'll look at it and maybe work on it. So, you know, rather than just complaining, I think, you know, it's not going to be this year, but, or right, you know, for this budget year, but I think going forward this year, we have to sit down and really strategize this and look at, because if we leave it up to the province or leave it up to the feds, status quo. Because you know why it's status quo? They're not paying. It's not impacting them. So, hey, thank you, local government. And trust me, we're getting to the point where we can't afford it. So that's just my rant for a minute. Councillor Peabody.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. No. No, actually, I do have a question for Chief Driver, if I may. So, yeah, we talk about the financial cost of this, but there's also the human costs of our firefighters. You know, going out to more calls, and you've shown us the stats. The amount of calls have increased substantially since 4 years ago when COVID started. So on top of the wear and tear of the vehicles, there's also going to be the wear and tear of our firefighters with fatigue, injuries, mental health, physical health. So like when we talk about pulling away from these, medical services, please don't see this as us not supporting our firefighters. Like I think council 100% is in support of our firefighters. Where our frustration comes is maybe with the system that's in place. And with the system, and my question is coming up here soon, are we attending a good amount of calls where the firefighter services aren't needed? And I know you've talked in the past, like when you get a call, you don't really know what that call is when it's a medical service. You don't know if it's an overdose. You don't know if it's a heart attack. You don't know if it's a seizure. But it seems like you also don't know if BC Ambulance is already attending the call. And I guess that's my question. Like, is there any communication between the fire department and BC Ambulance when that call comes in, whether or not one party is responding or if the other one is, or if if BC Ambulance is tied up and now you need to be first on scene?
Councillor Peabody through Mayor Price. Yeah, so we do have instant communication through the dispatch center. We have in-vehicle CAD communications straight from dispatch in BC Ambulance Service. So we know in real time what they're going to be doing. Times for delays aren't in real time. We generally have to check that through. We ask dispatch to ask what the delay time is going to be, but we know there's a delay when we're en route. And so we have a fax at the bottom of the stairs on the way out the door, and we have a CAD machine that the officer can look at while he's en route with updates coming as we're going. So there is pretty good situational awareness in respect to where BC Ambulance is and if they're coming, unless they're not coming. And then we generally just do a manual check with them over the radio on how long it's going to be.
Okay. So I guess my next question is, if you are doing a manual check, or if you have an idea if BC Ambulance is on the way, does our fire department, do they stand down or do they still attend the call if it's a medical call?
So generally with respect to medical calls is we'll stand down when BC Ambulance has patient care, and they've told us that they don't require our assistance at that point. And they do notify us of that as soon as they're able to determine it. So,
okay.
Yeah.
But if they're en route to determine if they need extra assistance.
Yeah, so the way the system is designed is that depending on the acuity of the call, all resources are deployed if it's a very high acuity call and needs are high. And so it's a horse race to get there.
Yeah.
Whoever gets there first delivers care to the patient, which is one of our customers. And as soon as
care can be taken over by the ambulance, it's done so. And if our care isn't needed, we just continue on. So, yeah, there's often times where we're canceled en route, we're canceled as soon as we arrive, we're canceled immediately after ambulance arrives, or they relieve us care. There are quite a few occasions in the community where ambulance arrives with 2 staff members and the call requires 4 or 5. And so we have the ability to make that adjustment kind of on the fly because we're already en route. And so it's a very flexible system, and my staff works really, really hard to make sure that we maintain that flexibility and availability to cover the rest of the city too at the same time. So, but there are licensing challenges around leaving a patient without higher level of care taking over for you. So
Fair. So yeah, I think maybe what I'm getting at here is that instead of just, discontinuing the practice of attending medical calls, do we need a different system where, maybe the firefighters, check in with BC Ambulance first? If BC Ambulance is in attendance, does our fire department then stand down? And if they're not able to attend, is that when if BC Ambulance is delayed or not able to attend, is that when fire department attends a medical call? And I don't know if this is something that can be answered today, but maybe that's the system that we need to be in place where we attend the medical calls when needed and when requested, but unless it's requested by BC Ambulance, then we stand down. And that's just a suggestion. Yeah, just a thought.
So what I will say about the BC Ambulance Service is the pre-hospital healthcare system is pretty standardized in the province of British Columbia, and the options for engagement are quite strict because they fall within the healthcare realm, not the local government realm. So when we're operating in the healthcare realm, which is what first responder services are, is we're very strictly held by licensing and the province's healthcare system. And so the menu choices for what we can and can't do are not as varied as many local governments would like, but I certainly can look into that. I don't know if we can go quite that far as what you were saying, but I'll take a look.
Thank you, everyone. So that was a great discussion. So what I think we should do is look at each item and then see if there's an action item that comes out of that council would like staff to deal with, such as, for example, assuming RDEC 20% RCMP. Is that something council wants information on at a future, more information on at a future meeting? Item number 1, cost recovery of 20% from the regional district.
Just 1 second, Charlotte.
7.8,
Where did I
the
go here?
last page.
The
What I will say is I actually, I will say nothing because I don't know what Barry is allowed to say about any of this. So
Yeah.
Barry should be the one to speak to this.
Councilor Graham.
Yeah, I think this is just from my experience around the table and with our RCMP is I don't think going after RDEK for 20% is the right avenue because they already pay for policing. Like they pay through the province. We're just showing that there's a complete lack from the province. So I think we need the RDEK on side with us as we lobby for some kind of a change in the model we have. So I wouldn't, my personal opinion is not put a lot of time into trying to get 20% of the RD.
Okay.
We'd
I
look
would
at
agree.
policing look at it a different way, and that's not necessarily going to be in the next month.
Why would they, and why would they pay for something that they're not paying for right now? So yeah, just to be the good neighbors, right? Hello, yeah.
Okay, so we have no additional instructions on item number 1.
No.
Okay. Item number 2, fire department staff should discontinue the practice of attending medical calls. Is there an action item there?
Councilor Graham.
I would say an action item will be a committee of the whole meeting sometime this year. Well, like maybe up into the summer, where we have a robust discussion around where we started with medical calls and where we are now. And then we can further a conversation, because again, it's not going to be anything that's going to be for this budget cycle, but I think it's worth having a committee of the whole on so that we can hear feedback from the chief driver and the department, and then we can layer that into kind of where we're headed and with cost driving as well. So that's what I would suggest for that one, but that's me.
It does make sense, Council? Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. Okay. Norma?
good.
Yeah, good. I think we're good to go on that then. Yeah. Norma,
And
go ahead.
also some information regarding, so what happens when the fire department is busy with a fire? They aren't doing medical calls, then I'm assuming. So I just would like information on that too.
So Scott, you want to speak to that? You guys stand down basically if it's a working fire on the first responder, right?
Yeah, I can answer that question quite easily right now. So on very significant incidents, when we have a fully involved structure fire or something that's overwhelming our resources, is that we do coordinate with BC Ambulance Service locally for a short duration to stand down from responding to those calls. So we make them aware. We understand that it puts them in a different operating situation and environment as well. And so we try and keep those at this point to a minimum amount of time. But yes, we would stand down for that situation. And Acom, like you brought up earlier, the fire on the Acom community was one of those instances where we stood down, I think, for almost 2 days. So it was quite significant, and I had a lot of conversations with BC Ambulance Superintendent in town because I recognized the challenges that it would present for himself as well.
Thanks, Scott.
All right, moving on to item number 3, increasing user fees for all adult programming. I think by 10% and children's programming by 5%. I think those will come forward when Trevor brings his fees and charges bylaw. As he's indicated, he wanted to see that come through, as early as May, if not sooner.
That's all right. You're good. Yeah, that's
Okay,
right. Yeah. very
everybody good with that?
Mhm.
Okay. So discontinuing the hanging basket program. So I just had a quick chat with Tony just about the garden club taking it over, and not to speak for Tony, but to kind of move things along. And if you have additional questions, of course, Tony's here, but we do coordinate some gardening with the garden club. Hanging baskets don't happen to be part of that. What I will say in terms of trying to save costs, somebody still has to pay for the flowers and the dirt and so yes, there might be some volunteer hours involved.
Councilor Brissette?
Well, thank you, but I'm not even thinking that it's the initial cost, it's the maintenance. Those are watered daily. And that I believe would be the real cost of the hanging basket program, because that's 7 days a week. And so, I mean, that's where I perceive the cost. I don't see it, but anyways, maybe Director Hitu could comment on that.
Thank you, Councillor Brissette, through the mayor. We did look at labor costs, and it amounts to approximately $15,000. So, I guess, when we're looking at FTEs, that's, you're talking about like a 0.15 FTE over the summer. So, yeah.
Well, thank you.
Councilor Ray?
As an action item, I wonder if we could follow up on Councillor Peabody's suggestion to look at the downtown parking reserve to see if that might be a revenue source to cover this cost versus what we currently do.
Yeah, great thought.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Tony. And then the last item is just a suggestion to keep the pay in advance discount for utilities as this decreases workload and mailing charges. So just a comment, I think. Okay.
Yep.
Good. All right. So we are down to the last 2 pages. This should be a pretty familiar looking schedule that you all see every year, several times a year. As we spoke, as I mentioned earlier, we are at 7.43 for 2025. 2026 is at 7.78. And then 27, 28, and 29, as is usually the case, they get less and less. This is without those sort of things we're working on, the future. This is where we're at today. And we saw what brought us there a couple of pages back. So just the final page for us to just go over is these three items that we often talk about for substantial reduction to the tax levy increase. And those three, actually, there's a new one on here this year, but so eliminate the growth component of the road dedicated tax. That's $357,000. Risk manage the RCMP. We did that for 2024 of $200,000. And then buy down the increase by drawing on the financial stabilization reserve or the accumulated surplus by $250,000. That would bring us down to around 5%. I have a couple of comments on that, but just to finish off that piece of the discussion, if we bring the 2025 rate down to 5% or 5.17, there's a bit of rounding between these two columns. 2026, without doing anything, becomes 10.08%. And the challenge with these three items up above is they are one-time items. What we're really looking for is sustainable savings or sustainable increases in revenue. And it has to be constantly growing or constantly decreasing, because a change only represents a change one time. So even if you increase your revenues by $50,000 for all years, it only helps you. It only represents an effect on your tax levy increase that 1 year. Unless 50 becomes 100, becomes 150, becomes 200. So just a couple of comments I have up above on those three items. Eliminating the growth component of the road dedicated tax, that's something council will have to discuss. Risk managing the RCMP, $200,000. My most recent set of financial statements, we have a deficit of $257,000 for the RCMP contract. So I'm definitely not comfortable risk managing that. And then to buy down the increase by drawing on the financial stabilization reserve. The financial stabilization reserve can't take very much more. And so I definitely don't love that idea either. And accumulated surplus. The accumulated surplus is our floater. And we are below the minimum amount set in our reserve and surplus policy, not by a lot, but we're below. And I would say, for what it's worth, and it's a very neutral comment, intended to be a neutral comment, it's been years since we have bought down the rate with surplus or out of a reserve in such a obvious way. So that's not, the other thing you could say is an accumulated surplus is surplus from multiple years, and there were surpluses because we we charged or collected taxes that were not needed, or we had surplus in other revenue sources. So that's a bit of probably a ideological discussion, but those three things, if you did those today, you would be down around 5%.
So Charlotte, we're working with the 2023 accumulated surplus. Is that correct?
Currently we are, yes, yeah.
And the final number on that was?
There was actually no surplus in 2020.
There wasn't any at all?
So there's accumulated surplus, which is all the years that have
Yeah,
stacked
no, I'm
up.
just talking for the 2023.
23, there was no current year surplus.
Well, that's a first.
Yep.
That's
Truly.
the first, seriously.
Truly, I've never seen it before.
No.
I've never seen it before. I have no idea what 24 is yet.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow. Okay. Councillor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just have a comment on what I've seen in the budget process so far, and just how you were talking about how some of these are just like a one-time savings, but how you're looking at more like long-term savings or just more long-term revenue. And one thing I think that I've seen with staff since we started this budget process and set this goal as 5% is that the mindset of staff has kind of changed, where instead of just like, okay, well, this is the way that we do things and this is how much money I need for next year. Now I see staff really focus on, okay, how can we make more money? Where can we find more revenue? And where can we find savings? And I hope that continues. Like in the revenue sources that I've seen here and the savings that I've seen so far, like I'm kind of hoping that's just sort of the cream on the top. And as we keep moving forward, we'll start to find more savings. And even little things like, the hanging basket program, whether or not we cancel that or just move the funding someplace else. That's $10,000, not a lot of money. If we find 30 of those, $10,000 savings between all the different departments, there's a percentage of our tax increase. So it's even though it seems like a small amount of money, if we find enough of those, it makes a big difference. But yeah, it's like I just want to say, like, so far what I've seen, we're unless we do something really drastic here, we're not getting down to that 5%. But so far what I've seen, I'm really impressed with, and I'm glad that staff has been taking the steps to get the tax increase to the level that it is. So thank you.
Anything further? Pardon me? Yes, CEO Fritro.
So thanks to Councillor Peabody for that comment. And I guess, the sort of summary of what we've done here on this page is I just wanted to give comfort to council that should they want to achieve the 5% they originally talked about, it could be achieved today. And that was the whole point of this conversation. However, the rest of the conversation we had all through the day was showing you, as Councillor Peabody said, all the work that we've been doing and all the work that is yet to come. So you've just got an overview of the budget process, and we're not finished yet. So we're working towards the targets. I just wanted to ask finance to make sure that should you want to know if we could hit 5%, you have comfort in knowing that there is options. You could do that today. But there is impact next year on doing that. But that being said, next year, we have room to work as well. So this is just a touch point in time. And then just so that you have that number in front of you as well. But we are continuing to work, and we will continue to work until the final day of having to set the budget numbers with you.
So, Charlotte, the dedicated road tax, was it last year or the year before we took it out? Year before? Year before. We had put it back in last year. So if we put it back in for 2025 and leave the other things out, does that get us down to 6.17? Is that correct?
So it would be our 7.43 minus
7.43, right? On the one with everything in?
7.43, yeah.
Yeah,
And then
and then
want-
I'm saying it, so that's 1%. The dedicated road tax is 1%.
So if you took, you'd be at 6.43.
Right, so if you look at the other one with those, taking those the
Yeah.
three things out,
Yeah.
I'm saying just put the dedicated road tax back in. And then we should be sitting around 6.17, which is palatable. I think, just for a matter of public interest, the year we didn't put the dedicated road tax, we kept it out. What was the big picture impact on that for annual funding? Because it's,
I think we agreed that we would be somewhere, like we've lost out on somewhere around $900,000
There you
by
go.
now. By
1 year's
2020, so
$900,000 when you,
24, 25, because you'll never get that 1 year back, and that one
Yeah.
year stacks every year. So by removing it 1 year, you'll never get it back. You
$1
just
million
start over.
is $1 million when we're talking roads. And that's why, let's be honest, if a council ever comes along and removes that permanently, that's suicide. But, if you look at the impact of just that hit and miss pulling every now and then, there's a cost. So, you know, yeah, you saved 1% one year, but a couple years later, it's a $900,000 impact, almost $1 million impact. So, Charlotte, I would like, you know, just to see some numbers with that added in. And if we're at 6.17, I mean, that's mission accomplished for me, because we're not going to get to 5. That is, we can see clearly that's impossible to get to 5%. You know, just building on what Councillor Peabody said, and thank you for bringing that up, Mike. This year, I've, you know, and I was on that other side, for, you know, since 2005, and then this side, you know, since 2018. And so I've seen it. And I can tell you, I've never seen staff have to drill down or take it upon themselves to drill down. Sometimes you just said, not happening without even a voice, which was pretty bad. But this year, man, and you can see it, you know, when we heard earlier, you know, from Trevor, like when you're drilling down by the hour, by the people to that scale, like we're getting down to the microscopic scale of what we're doing. It's going to be what it is. And you know what? And the only other way, we're shutting stuff down and we're cutting services, pure and simple. And we saw very clearly in the survey, in the citizen survey, they don't want to lose any services. And if you look at the, and it's really interesting, if you looked at the satisfactory element in there, very satisfied or somewhat satisfied, and then not satisfied, everything was over 50%, except our bylaw. And the only knock on bylaw is they wish they would be finding more people and we could have more people there. I mean, that's tough to take. So what do? I think the message that we've got, and we, you know, did we put that survey out for nothing? The people that responded have a genuine interest in the community. They took the time to respond. And to me, that means a lot because I'm going through this daily. I'm going to do a report on it at the end of the day. And I'm working on that daily when I have time. And we got some fantastic feedback. You know, it wasn't all negative or just chucking stuff out there. So, you know, those are the ones that responded. We have to take that into consideration. I mean, so, you know, we threw the 5% out, or somebody threw a 5% out. It wasn't an expectation, okay? It was something we'd try to get to. It is clearly evident to me that we cannot get down to 5% without closing arenas or closing programs or getting rid of our summer crews. And you know what this town would look like? I mean, that's the reality, guys. And so staff, you've done all you could do. Absolutely. I am really, really impressed. And thank you very much for the leadership and finance, you know, for driving that. You guys did an incredible job this year. And we're not done yet. Yeah. Yes, Charlotte.
Thank you very much. Mayor Price, your words made me realize that one item that we have not actually spoken to was the, and we need to speak to it because we're meeting on February 10th to assign the grant applications. One of the items that staff had identified for further savings was to hold the 2025 grant pot at 2024 levels, and that would save about $45,000. Further to that, there was another discussion about reducing that pot by a further 10%. So overall, the savings, if you did both of those, would be about $50,000. So because we are meeting on the 10th and you are all submitting your final recommendations by the end of this week, we should have a discussion about whether or not there's interest in reducing that.
Okay. Councillor Ray?
I'd like to make a motion that we decrease to the 2024 level, so not the additional 10%, but to the 2024 level. So I would be pleased to put that motion forward.
Seconder, Councillor Graham? Discussion. Councillor Graham?
Yeah, I'm good with that because I'm under the level anyway.
Councillor Peabody?
Yeah, I'm in favor of this too, but I'm just, if we vote to move the History Center to our grants for nonprofits, I would assume that we would be adding an extra $100,000 into that pot. Wouldn't that be the case?
Councillor Peabody through Mayor Price, yes, I would just reallocate the amount of money that is currently allocated to the History Center and move it into the grant pot, yes.
Okay, great,
Yeah,
thank you.
it's about $120,000, yeah.
Yeah, I had that thought, but I better not bring it up right now. I'll save it until the next meeting. Anything further? Charlotte?
Just a vote on the,
I apologize. All in favor? Opposed? Yep, that's carried unanimously.
Wait.
I'm sorry, I didn't see
Sorry.
your hand up. I looked earlier. Yep.
So yeah, so what I was thinking is I don't want to make a decision on that today. I'd like to wait until we review the grants to organizations on the 10th, and then we can make that decision. I would rather not vote on that today because we haven't got the numbers in front of us.
We've got a motion there, so I guess the only way, Norma, we could get around that is defeat the motion and then, yeah. So, yeah,
Yes, if others agree with me, otherwise I'm just going to vote against the motion.
that's fine. Yeah. Okay. Councillor Peabody.
Yeah, I guess just to comment on what Councilor Blissett said, even if we kept even if we kept the budget the same, we don't necessarily have to spend the whole budget, do we? Yeah, so if we leave money in the pot, we can leave money in the pot.
Thank you. Councillor Ray.
From my perspective, the purpose of this motion is so everyone's on the same page about what our sort of budgeting goal is for the nonprofit grants. And so that everyone can make their recommendations accordingly. So the expectation would be that no one would go above that amount. And as Councillor Graham has said, people would certainly have the option of going below that amount. But I do see the value in having everyone on the same page on what our total maximum grant is. When we look at all the applications, I do think that is a good practice when doing this type of granting.
Thank you for that, Councillor Ray. And my 2 bits worth on that is I agree with Councillor Ray on that. And, you know, we're cutting everywhere else. It's not like we're cutting anything. We're just not providing any more additional monies this year. And yeah, we're looking for every nickel we can find. That's my comment on that. Back to Councillor Blissett.
Thank you. I'm not saying that we aren't going to cut there, but I'd like to do it. I mean, I've already submitted my information to staff because it's due the end of the month and we're at the end of the month. And so, and I was under, so that's not an issue. But I think I would just feel better with the information, but it doesn't matter, truly. We are looking at reducing that amount anyways, but we can go ahead either way.
Thank you, Councillor Blissett. Anything further? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is approved. One opposed. Councillor Blissett is opposed.
okay, thank you, everyone. As usual, some really, really great discussions. Thank you for the nice words, Councillor Peabody and everyone. So the next time I will be with you will be in March. I can see some opportunities for some maybe one-off reports coming forward to council, but I'll speak with CAO Furcho and see how we might want to deal with some of that. We've never done this before, but this doesn't have to be adopted until the minute before the tax rate bylaw. So May 15th, obviously, we hope not to push it that late. Yeah, so we will reconvene as a budget group, I think, in latter part of March, and perhaps clean up some things before we get there. But if not, we'll deal with it when we see you again.
Charlotte, one quick question. Coal Creek Dam right now, was it 14 million? Something like that? Is it all borrowing?
It is.
The whole amount is borrowing?
It's all
Okay, thank you.
borrowing in the budget, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Further? Okay, with that, I'll get a motion to adjourn. Councillor Graham and Councillor Ray, all in favor? Opposed? We are adjourned.